Welcome to part 3 of the Now You're Playing With podcast console launch special. We left off with Chris's convincing Steve, Becky, and myself to give the 32X launch a 60 instead of 59, so it barely squeaked out of a failure with a D-. This episode, we're going to start in the heart of the console craze of the 90s and finish up with the current generation. Join us as our opinions continue to split while we're going through the end of the list.
Now you're playing with podcast.
All right, here we are for another installment of the Now You're Playing With podcast launch analysis special, part 3.
Spectacular.
3 out of 3?
Hopefully.
Okay.
We'll see how far we go.
We'll plow. We might skip the current gen if it gets too long.
No, we have to keep the current gen.
Whatever.
That's the one I'm the most bitter about.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, we can go through it and be like, and here's the winner. Yay, we're done.
Lame.
That's what
Wait, we are going to pick winners? Is that the idea?
I think we should pick a winner.
Okay. Sure.
All right, well, let's introduce everybody. I'm Chris.
I'm Becky.
I'm Steve.
And I'm Tatton.
And we left off with the Sega 32X, which actually convinced these people was not a complete failure, just a D effort.
Just mostly a failure.
It was a failure afterwards.
It's still repeating the 4th grade, but it's not as big of a deal.
Expelled.
Right.
Yeah.
It didn't fail till the next year.
Repeating the 4th grade, no summer school. Sure.
So let's just touch briefly on the other consoles of that time, of that 16-bit era time. The Neo Geo, I'm not seeing a launch lineup just from a quick Google search. I think Magician Lord and Nom 1975. I don't think any of the fighting games were out with the initial launch. That came a little bit later. But it's heavy price tag, and it was a novelty console at the time, so I don't think it deserves a grade anyway, because it wasn't ever considered as a mainstream console. It was more of a high-end niche machine.
D.
Yeah, that was another one that was just mythical, along with TurboGrafx for me. Like,
Yeah, these things didn't exist except in magazines.
Right.
You know, I didn't know anybody growing up that had them, and later on when I started working at the Magical GameStop, one of the guys that I worked with had one and, talked about it. And he was like, well, you should know what this is. Dirt, no. Because there was no,
The first time I saw one was in Playboy magazine, of all things.
Well, why were you reading Playboy magazine?
Because my dad had them, and I was 13, so why would... If I
that's
wasn't
the reason
reading,
to read them there.
If
yeah.
I wasn't 13 and there was a Playboy and I wasn't reading it, there'd be more problems. Any Neo Geo thoughts, Tan?
So I guess 2 things. First of all, it looks like the Neo Geo Japanese launch library
Doesn't count.
didn't count.
No.
Okay.
Well, it depends on what... I mean, those could have come stateside.
Well, the problem is like Neo Geo always like blurred their launches between their regions. I mean, the stuff that wasn't translated, because there were a lot of Japanese games that were just in English.
We got a lot of other machines to go to, so...
All right. Neo Geo was one of my favorites growing up. And, for anyone not in the know, cool thing about Neo Geo is the hardware in the Neo Geo itself is just a consoleized version of the arcade board. I mean, it is identical to the arcade hardware, except they changed some pinouts in there. And the same thing with the games. It's the exact same thing that you had with the arcade version, the home version. Again, just pinouts different, so you couldn't swap them in and out. So it was the only one that actually really got to say, we bring the arcade experience home, because they literally brought the arcade experience home.
That put the final nail in the coffin for the Genesis claim that it was the arcade machine.
Right.
They had to change their focus, and they did with Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah, and the challenge is the system was what, like $700 at launch?
600. Hold on.
It was enough.
I may be able to, because we've got ancient magazines here that smell so good.
Yeah, and the games were like hundreds of dollars a piece. I mean, this dates itself even. Like, I remember going to Incredible Universe. And seeing them for like $300-$400 for a game, and even when they went out of business, like they were clearancing them out initially at like $200 a game, and people were picking them up. They were like, "These are half off. It's amazing."
Such a
So games for that system now, are they less than they were originally? Most of them.
It depends on what you're going.
It depends on
The
which
early
one.
run games are fairly inexpensive. They're $20 to $50 depending on condition. But the later games that had really small runs, they go for more than what they launched for. They go for 5, 6. Like some of the rare games go for over 1,000 easy.
Yeah, if you wanted to. Now these are imports. This was through 1-800 Toy Club. which I bet if you called them now, it's
You would not
probably
sex,
not
yeah.
getting that. Yeah, so baseball was $259, golf was $200. Like baseball, golf, Magician Lord, Nom 75. They do not give the price for the system either. So this is right before the system hit stateside, but silly expensive. So silly expensive, mythical, but kind of awesome. I mean, Neo Geo really is a great system. It just
I think this is bringing it back. Reading those ads in the back of magazines, and I used to think it was like a joke. Like, what is this? That's so much money.
Yeah. Some of those ads I remember selling JAMA boards. Like, here, get Mortal Kombat 2 for $3,000, and it's like, okay, I got that in my pocket.
sure.
I don't know about you guys. Did you guys ever play a Neo Geo? Like
Not
growing
until
up?
I played
Not
a couple in the
growing up.
arcade, not realizing what it was, and I remember Samurai Showdown 2 being like the best fighting game other than Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat.
See,
Yeah, I'm sure I played it on some arcade, like the Red arcade.
Right, the candy
Yeah,
cab.
yeah.
that was a really cool thing about here in Columbus, because we had Video Games Express that would buy all the consoles, and they would do the console rentals. And like you could pick up for like $20. You could rent a Neo Geo for a weekend, and
But it
play
required a
so-
credit card for the deposit.
Yeah.
I tried that with a Sega CD at a Blockbuster, and my dad wouldn't have any of it.
The only one we rented from Blockbuster was the Virtual Boy.
That's why they're out of business. Next oddity system is the 3DO. According to the Game Informer article, just 3 games at launch: Alone in the Dark, Myst, Star Control 2. The 3DO was $699 at launch. The first model was a Panasonic only. But the 3DO was sort of a platform, kind of like PC or VCR, where anybody could produce a machine. So, and it was sort of a proto PlayStation. A lot of the games tended to be PC-style games or 3D, that primitive 3D style game.
Awkward adolescence of gaming.
Yeah, very... It was cutting edge, but I can't remember being interested in any of the stuff that came out for it.
Well,
Not at that price
They
tag.
gave it a C-, and that's kind of not fair. That's a lame.
That's 3 games, nothing classic. A lot of people swear by Star Control 2, and Myst, I
It's
guess,
not
would have
that
been
great.
kind of cool. But if you could afford $700 for 3DO, why not just buy a PC?
Right. The considering what's on there, the 3DO. I don't know that the 3DO could have really pushed itself beyond a PC at the time, and you could get the PC cards too to play.
That didn't
3DO
come till
games.
a lot later.
Yeah,
and it was kind of those are rarely rare too.
And again, I mean, the thing to remember about this period of time
Well,
is
PCs were $2,600 to get a basic one.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was well over $2,000 for a PC, and you were also looking at, if you had a PC, you wanted to put a CD-ROM drive on it, you're looking at
didn't get
anywhere
one,
from
yeah.
like $350 to $600, depending on where in the launch that happened. So, if you're going to spend $600, do you get it for a PC that even back then people were saying were, getting out of date and getting obsolete quick, or do you get a standalone console that isn't going to get obsolete, air quotes, and can run all of your all the software that you want?
Was 3DO ever a system advertised to play movies? Did it?
That never
I
did
never saw it as an
materialize.
ad,
it was coming soon.
No, they did. They released the video CD card for it.
That was CDI.
CDI.
I
We have one for our
There was an
CDI.
M2 card, I think it was called, for the 3DO, and that never materialized. The PlayStation beat it.
thought we had one for the 3D. I thought we had one for the 3DO and one for the CDI.
Do we?
I'm
Yeah,
pretty
whatever.
sure.
Who cares?
Aw.
It's a 3DO. Nobody cares.
Wait, so that one was actually in the Game Informer.
It is,
article?
and it was given a C-. I'd say D or F.
To play
but
Myst.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
really
Oh, it is.
yeah. That's a lot of
The,
money.
pri-
to play
the price is
Myst.
too much. The games aren't memorable.
But the price
Done
was
elsewhere.
fair for its time. I'm gonna stick with its C minus.
Well, and the controller.
I'll
That's
see,
the
I
one with
guess.
the tetherable controllers
Right.
too.
Yeah, which is
What a fantastic idea! You only have one port on the system.
And the built-in headphone jack on the controller, which was brilliant. I'm surprised nobody.
True.
Yeah.
True,
Nobody
true,
didn't bring that back until Xbox
Xbox.
Live.
well, and even then they didn't bring it back. I mean, that was only for the
For the
chat.
chat,
You
not
couldn't
for the
send
sound.
audio out.
Well, you can do it with a third-party Hudson controller for the
Whatever.
NES. They're
Yeah.
sweet. Yeah, if you ever have the opportunity, it's a really cool controller that goes in and moves your audio. You can do headphones out on it.
It's still third party though.
Next,
Yeah, it's very true.
the next loser in the 1993-1994 video game sweepstakes is the Atari Jaguar, released in November 1993. Pack-in games, according to Game Informer: Cybermorph, which is the pack-in,
Yeah, Bruce.
Raiden, Trevor McFur, and the Crescent Galaxy. Raiden's a good port of a good game. There were versions for the Super NES and Genesis. The Jaguar version is a little bit better. Not enough to make me buy a system, though. Cybermorph is complete trash. I haven't played Trevor McFur.
Trevor McFur is not great.
Okay.
My brother got that system for $40 and ended up getting games for like maybe a few dollars a piece at KB Toys. This is back when there were KB Toys, but this was like way late in the game and awful. Oh my god, awful. The controller was just ridiculous, and you got the overlays for it to try to learn how to play.
Yeah, it was
Cyberpunk.
similar to the Intellivision and.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was the guys. Really, you didn't learn from your 5200 mistake.
When did Cybermorph come out in relation to like Star Fox? Was that? I don't know.
About the same time, 93. I think
93, yeah.
Star
It
Fox
looks
was either 93.
much worse than Star.
Yeah, Star Fox just had better controls too. The
Fox had
thing with
better
Cybermorph
everything.
is you fly your plane clumsily, and this woman comes up and says, "Where did you learn to fly?" And
Dude,
over
barrel.
and over.
yeah, and over and over. It's bad. And
You can't see where you're going ever.
Remember a Checkered Flag coming out relatively early, trying to be like virtual racing, and it was terrible. Later on, the next year, Doom and Wolfenstein came out. Those were probably the best console ports of those two games.
They were pretty good.
Wolfenstein didn't. I don't think came on any other system. Maybe the 3DO, but
Wait, no.
There's
No,
no SNES.
Wolfenstein was
There's
on
an
everything,
SNES.
pretty much.
is there an SNES?
Yeah,
Wolfenstein?
there's an awful SNES.
Yeah, it
But
wasn't the
Jaguar is
Genesis.
excellent.
I thought the Genesis was the only one that didn't get Wolfenstein.
Yeah. Because Wolfenstein was ported to the SNES, and Wisdom Tree bought the licensing rights for it because it was so bad, and they turned that into Super Noah's Ark 3D.
Right, and
Alien vs Predator is considered the best game. On
Yeah,
this.
it's-
Tempest
Yeah, and
2000.
rather interesting.
That's
Oh, yeah,
the
that's-
other big
yeah.
one. That one is really cool for its time because that was the first real good attempt at modernizing a 3D game, and it was very hypnotic and techno-y. And I'm not a big fan of techno music, but if you put it in the right situation, it's awesome. And Tempest 2000 is that game.
And if you're interested in the soundtrack, Best Electronic CA sells it.
Nice.
Yeah, for like $5. But anyhow, they give it a D. I completely agree. Cybermorph is awful. Atari could have been even if they had just provided a couple like Mortal Kombats and NBA Jams, which they did have an NBA Jam, but no Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
They
Well,
could have brought some
tried with,
American arcade games over and made a name for himself and failed to do that.
Yeah, and I don't know if they just if they couldn't get the third party support for it, or if they were just trying to push their own stuff because they had the Kasumi Ninja that came out for it, which was awful. But they were trying to push the envelope on violence and everything else, and
It was
It
a Me
just-
And then
Too.
we got
It didn't
Zoop
pull
and
out.
Zool 2. Zool 2. They ported
Zoop was on everything.
yeah, Zoop would hit absolutely everything.
Zool 2 was an Amiga port, I
Yes.
think.
Yeah,
Pretty good game, actually.
it is pretty fun.
My brother had that.
A Sonic Me Too game, but it was pretty good. All right.
They had Bubsy.
Yeah, they did. They have an original Bubsy. It didn't appear in any other system.
They did.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
good for them. What could possibly go wrong?
I don't hate
Another thing
Bubsy
about
as much as
Jaguar,
everything else does.
I remember getting I don't know how long after the system came out, but it was like a pamphlet in the mail trying to sell me direct mail
Do the math.
Jaguar for I'd say it was $40. That sounds about right.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
I was like, I should have done that.
All right, now on to the more official lineage systems. Although this next system is mostly a dud to most people's minds too. The Sega Saturn. Mr. Tatton's got its report.
Were we going to talk about the CDI?
Yeah, what about the CDI?
Fuck CDI.
Oh,
Infomercial system. I mean, wasn't even a game console till much later.
Well,
it wasn't
When it
but-
came out, it was like kids software, CD-ROM titles, educational stuff. There's a golf game.
But that was the thing. It's like the CDI was the one that effectively pulled off the home computer.
Right. It was the same crap they were putting out for the trying to shill your parents to get a computer.
It was,
Like don't spend $2,200 on a computer. Spend $700 on a CDI, and you can watch movies.
You can get the
video
movie,
disc,
the
and-
movie adapter, and watch them in awkward, blocky, pixelated.
it wasn't even
form.
launched as a game console, so I wouldn't even rate it.
It wasn't, but it was advertised. I mean, it was
Advertised as a
one.
home utility. It wasn't or a computer.
How about the Pico? Does that have any launch?
No, we're Mason time. I want to talk
Yeah.
Saturn.
Oh wait, I just wanted to say though, it's the Turbo Booster is the name of the thing that goes on
Yes.
the back.
Oh,
of the
that's right.
Turbo
Retro graphics for AV. Yes.
Yeah, and I opened up a 5-screw Super Mario Brothers, and it says 1986 on it, so it means nothing, but
Gotcha.
it doesn't say
Yeah.
1985.
Yeah, no, I would.
Very,
Yeah.
very good detective work.
And-
sir.
If it was
Hey.
manufactured in '86, then I would think that would really be a good point, like the proof in the pudding there.
Yeah.
Somebody posted on Game Gavel on their Game Gavel's Facebook page. There's it looks like an FAO Schwartz Christmas launch page. Like one of the pages, launch titles. Mach Rider was in there. Super Mario Brothers was not. But the way that the systems were sold was different than what the standard, what everybody assumed was, this came with Rob. Rob was separate. The systems were sold separately. Like, there were some that had the pack-ins, but it was very unique. I'm going to have to dredge that up again and pass it around. But no Super Mario Brothers.
Fucking A.
Okay. I'm convinced.
So Sega Saturn.
Yep, awesome Sega Saturn launch. So we launch at $399. Very limited in the retailers that sold it in the beginning. However, one of the cool things about the launch was it was announced at E3 in 1995.
Very first E3.
Yeah,
The very first keynote of the very first E3.
And when it was announced, they announced that it was available that day at those retailers. So it was one of those like surprise Apple launches where, we're showing you something awesome and you can leave here and go buy it right now, which is pretty cool. Its official launch date was May 11th. It had 5 launch titles: Virtua Fighter, Panzer Dragoon, Clockwork Knight, Bug, and Daytona USA. The launch is really kind of an awkward one because, like, leading up to it, there was so much competition and talk about Saturn versus PlayStation, and all the experience of Sega has in the system, but all the just awesome stuff that Sony was bringing to the table and showing what they could do with the PlayStation.
Sony was kind of a non-gaming entity at that point. They were like Panasonic 3DO. They were like Philips CDI. They were a non-gaming company trying to get into the business. And I don't know if you had this part of the story, but they did upstage Sega's announcement at that E3 because after they got off the stage with, "Hey, you can get a console today," Sony goes up on stage and says $299, and they get a standing ovation.
Yeah,
which
Isn't that all no introduction? They just go up and say
they say $299. Woo! So that we'll go ahead and finish. I'm sorry I interrupted.
Oh, no. That's actually what I was going to bring up because it's like announcing Tony Hawk Ride and then having the Kinect get announced right behind you. I mean, it just completely sets you off on the wrong launch when people out of the gate are kind of poo-pooing you and hooray for someone else who kind of gets that scoop. It really sets you off on the wrong foot. Plus, something as big as this, people aren't just going to throw down $300 and $400,
which is $601 in today's money. Sorry,
no, that's fine. So I don't know, what did Game Informer give this launch? Because I would probably give it higher than what they would.
Page 3, they got a C+.
Yeah, I mean, I'd give it a B. I don't think it was bad by any means. It didn't have like a big launch catalog, but compared to the PlayStation launch when we get to it, I thought it was a fair competitor to the two. And specifically looking at all the competition with the CDI, the 3DO, the Turbo Duo, against all of those things, I thought it had a pretty good launch. It's not great by any means.
It didn't sell.
Yeah, if you don't,
it was a flop. It had 5 games and nothing came out till Christmas after those 5 games.
And also, I don't know how apocryphal this, but didn't they piss off many retailers by only having it in?
Yeah, no, they did.
KB, what was the stores that had it?
Right. It was like Walmart and EB. I forget the 2 stores, but
I think doomed the system.
It was KB, wasn't
it? The way they launched it.
And the centerpiece Virtua Fighter was a piece of shit. They had to do a Virtua Fighter remix and send it out to people for free because it was so nerfed. It was not nerfed, but it was.
No, that's nerfed.
Okay, I thought nerf was like when they made whatever. It wasn't. It just. I'm looking at the 1995 games, and it does get better, but a lot of these games were scheduled. The developers, the third parties, were pissed off too because they didn't know it was going to come out early, and they couldn't capitalize on the launch. Virtua Fighter Remix was a lot better than the first one. Virtua Cop was pretty good. Daytona was pretty buggy, although I love Daytona. But compared to the arcade, Ridge Racer on the PlayStation was a lot better port than Daytona USA on the Saturn, even though Daytona itself was a better game than Ridge Racer in the arcade. if that makes sense.
Weren't the load times a lot better in Daytona than they were in Ridge Racer? I remember.
Well, if you have this
load
terrible
times.
fucking pop up when you're going around the track and like that big mountains in the background, it doesn't show up till you're right next to it. It was atrocious. They just didn't. It was rushed.
Did it come with a bootleg sampler? Was that a launch? Did it actually come with the sampler disc?
I believe the first edition came with Virtual Fighter.
Yeah, it came with Virtua Fighter in the States.
Okay. So you did have a pack-in?
Yeah.
Yeah, the later ones, when Sony came out and Sega realized, oh shit, we're $100 behind. Mm-hmm. That's when they started putting demo discs in and lowering the price and all that kind of stuff.
And then the three pack-in.
Yeah, the buy, you get the 3. I don't know when that promotion happened with the Virtua Fighter 2 and Daytona and Virtua Cop.
But were those mail off or were they?
Yeah, it was mail off at first, I think.
And then they started packing those guys in because I know. I think that's what my friend had years ago. Was he traded his PlayStation for a Saturn?
Good for him.
He's like the only person that did that in the universe.
Yeah, so he got some good games for it, but for reals. But looking at those games, those are pretty. There's a few kid-friendly games in there too.
Yeah,
you've got Clockwork Knight, you've got Bug. I mean, those are games that you could.
There's
potentially...
no Sonic in there though.
No, there isn't. But
and that's what sunk Sega more than I said in the last episode. Everybody says, "Oh, Sega had too much hardware and they lost their way." They had one really popular game like Sonic or Donkey Kong Country. Whichever platform that game appeared on would have like sold extremely well.
But when we need to get to the PlayStation launch because I want to critique the two against each other. But when did PlayStation launch?
In September.
September 9th, 1995.
Okay, and when was
I think
what was
May?
the next big game
N60.
for the Saturn that released that? Did they hold a title back for? Like, did they release Sonic Jam or anything then, or were those way later?
No, 95. I've got the whole list here. It's it's like 50 games total, which is pretty good, really. But the third parties were just caught off guard. Astal was a very beautiful game.
It was gorgeous.
Bug, that was like an attempt at 3D platforming, not very good. Clockwork Knight 2 actually came out that same year, which is crazy. This is according to RF Generation. These dates might not be correct. Galactic Attack was a cool shooter. The Horde starring Kirk Cameron.
Nice.
Minnesota Fats Pool Legend.
Oh, that game is so great.
It's so bad it's good. It's the worst acting of all time. Those really horrible 3D sports games, NHL All-Star Hockey, no NFL game. Oh, and
Was Panzer Dragoon very popular? And it did have sequels.
It was a neat game.
I think it was like the game to get
Pretty.
if you bought a Saturn, but it didn't get people to buy Saturns that weren't interested in them.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those real stylistic games that isn't. Sega Rally, that's according to this, that's 1995. That's probably the best game on here. SimCity 2000, Virtua Cop, that was excellent. But there was...
Street Fighter the movie.
That game isn't as bad as everybody makes it out to be.
No, roll, Julia. It is as bad as everybody makes it out to be.
The movie sucks. The game isn't so bad.
I made you sit through that, didn't I?
Yeah.
Oh god, it was horrible.
You have it on DVD?
I have it on Blu-ray.
They released it on Blu-ray.
They did, in fact, just for me.
Okay, so who's got PlayStation?
I do.
Okay.
I do. All right. So it launched at $299. The PlayStation, just to let you know, the PlayStation lasted from 1995 to 2006. They were actively making games for it. Albeit towards the end, it was just Maddens and stuff.
$299 is $450.88 in $2012.
So early units had skipping FMV issues, ticking noises. The vents were improperly placed, so they were overheating. The plastic moldings inside would warp slightly and create a knock-on effects with the laser. If you turned it upside down or sideways, you were able to fix it. Japan got S-Video out. We did not.
You Are Not Ready, which is the
which
was actually a U, letter U,
Yep.
letter R, not, and then there was a red letter E. So ready, get it?
Jeez.
Get
Yeah.
it? That was their.
I actually liked that campaign. I thought that was pretty cool.
The Saturns was pretty pretentious too. That was Theater of the Eye. they sent out VHS tapes to everybody who got their Sega Visions subscriptions, and it was this big 7-minute long commercial, and that's pretty. Nintendo did it too after that, for a lot of their titles, but Sega was the first one I ever got for the Saturn, and it was this this bald, this Sinead O'Connor looking chick with the Saturn rings around her head. This is the future.
I remember that.
Yeah, it's real. It's kind of creepy, but they were trying too hard to be cool. And they had like a deal with Sub Pop Records, and they had like a mini blimp at WWF pay-per-views flying around inside the arena.
Did they even have a WWF game at the time?
Arcade game, I think, came out that year.
Okay.
Plus.
I gotta say that this is completely under the radar for me because it just seemed like it was just gonna be another 3DO or CDI.
It was
before I actually saw it. Someone that actually had it.
The PlayStation.
Yeah, the PlayStation.
And frankly, that's what I thought too. And it was all $299 was cheaper than Saturn, but it was still $299. Sega Genesis and Super NES were $99, so you're tripling the amount of money it costs for these systems. And these games are probably slightly better launch wise, but still nothing that would say come buy me right away.
What were the launch games?
Air Combat by Namco. It was a flight simulator, and it was by EGM said in 1995 it was the best flight simulator out. Battle Arena Toshinden, which was Sony's killer app.
No,
seriously, they
tried to make it, but
first one Sony was on board with. It was originally Takara and Sony, and
game sucks.
It's not that bad.
Sony
sucks.
I liked
Sony
it.
left the series afterwards, so EGM gave it Best Fighter in 1995.
They were probably paid for that too.
ESPN
sure
Extreme Games, which was a sports game. It was the X Games of 95, and if anybody ever is looking for it, it was re-released as One Extreme when it was done as a Greatest Hits. They lost the ESPN license on it.
It's like a poor man's Road Rash. It's not even as good as Road Rash, honestly.
So you're not nipple surfing on asphalt?
No, you're doing the same thing with all the different, whether it's like rollerblades or skateboarding or whatever.
Rollerblading, street luge, mountain biking, skateboarding.
But it's all the same thing. There's
California
like no difference.
Games equals plus Awkward Adolescence of Gaming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it wasn't. It was 2D. Like it was kind of like Road Rash. It wasn't.
But you can't
very
punch
good.
people. Maybe you can. It's not Olympics or anything. It's just street games.
Kill Leak, the DNA Imperative, and IGN gave that a 3 out of 10. It was a first-person Mac-based
IGN was around
thing.
then.
Now they do. So yeah.
That's retroactive.
I'm just kind of going through.
They would have given it a 7 back then.
Yeah, damn straight, because I got paid off on it. NBA Jam Tournament Edition, which was by Midway, and had multiple ports. So boom shakalaka. Power Serve Tennis 3D, which IGN gives a.
What is it with tennis games being in all these launch lineups?
That's
so weird.
All of them, were they?
Other than like the 2600, but there's an NES tennis. There was
an
Super NES
Intellivision
tennis. There was Intellivision tennis. Other than Virtua Tennis, I never remember anybody giving a flying crap about tennis games.
Rayman by Ubisoft, which in 1995 it got the best animation and the best music in a CD game. In 2 years, it sold 900,000 copies of that game.
2D game, by the way.
Yeah, Ridge Racer by Namco. It had mixed reviews. The lack of AI was kind of a problem, but it was the best driving game of 1995.
Cool thing about Ridge Racer, the whole game loaded into RAM. So once the game loaded, you could pull out the disc and put in your own CD and listen to your own music while you're playing the game.
Mm-hmm.
Also, didn't it have a mini game? Can you play Galaga?
Yeah, Galaga.
The loading times were so long that you could play Galaxian while it was booting
If
up.
you beat all the ships in that loading screen, you got 2 extra bonus cars.
It's just so ridiculous.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a creative way to hide your load times, but oh my god, like that's when I first played that, I'm like, this has got to be a joke. Like it really takes
that's
this long
that's
to
cool
launch
that
the
there
game.
were no load times and the whole game loaded in RAM and you could put your own music. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, but you had to wait for
the load
times
at the beginning were so long. Like after the the initial I guess surprise of Galaxy getting to play it or whatever, like going back and like replaying it and popping it back in and having to wait for that to go through was just ridiculous.
But you only do it once.
And once
every
every
time
time you turn the system on.
Right.
I think that's way better than having to wait for load times in modern
every-
games with every level and that core crap. I mean, that load times were that acceptable that early on kind of pissed me off, and why I didn't buy into any of these systems until much later. I didn't get my PlayStation until Christmas of '97.
Well, the load times now are still ridiculous. The problem is that everybody
cool
accepts
with
them.
it.
Everybody thinks it's perfectly fine.
Right.
Like, it's no problem. I'm perfectly happy to turn my PS3 on, wait 20 minutes for it to download an update and apply it, just so I can pop a game in and wait 15 minutes for it to download, apply an update.
But a
mini
game that lets you get unlock bonus items is a cool idea.
So Street Fighter the movie by Capcom, which was the game itself was based on Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. It does not feature Raul Julia doing the motion capture, but everybody else in the movie it did. So if you want to see some Kylie Minogue, yeah.
So, okay.
The Raiden Project.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so it is thought to be an arcade perfect port of the shmup. And then Total Eclipse Turbo, which was a 3DO port, and it's a space shooter by Crystal Dynamics.
You had a lot of those games, those 3DO ports. They canceled a lot of 3DO projects that jumped to the PlayStation.
Yeah. So as for a launch, it's not. I'm not going to say that it's a bad launch. What did it get?
Let me bring it up. It was the most successful launch in history up to that point. People actually pre-ordered PlayStations. I think because of the Saturn debacle, that actually kind of helped Sony even more. Like, I can pre-order this and actually get one on launch day, and look at all these games I'm going to get. They handled it a lot better. They had the price point better. The games themselves,
The games were all pretty terrible.
They had some cool 2D games that
Rayman.
Rayman.
Good.
Yeah.
And I also remember Mortal Kombat 3 being an exclusive to Sony for a limited period of time, and Saturn having to stick with the Mortal Kombat 2 port for those first year or so. The Super NES and Genesis having ports of Mortal Kombat 3 as well, but if you wanted like the best port, you could only get it on PlayStation. I remember that being a coup at the time. Let me bring up my scan here.
So yeah,
Sony PlayStation Get to See. It seems like it's the best, like success wise, and what happened with the PlayStation, the momentum that they started with that successful launch, you'd have to give it an A. The games, there's nothing classic in that list. Battle Arena Toshinden was a fucking piece of shit, and that was kind of like the featured game.
NBA Jam.
That was
Rayman?
NBA Jam had done on other systems.
Yeah,
that
it must be like
What was on everything?
NBA Jam with load times.
You didn't buy
Same thing, but with load
buy a
times,
PlayStation to play NBA Jam. If you had a PlayStation, you'd buy NBA Jam, but not the other way around.
There was nothing on that system that sold the system.
Right.
Some of the later games that came out that same year, because remember it came out in September, so you only had 3 months left.
Might be out.
WWF WrestleMania, the arcade game, which is a favorite of mine.
Is that
for
the button
whatever
mashy?
That's the one we played. The
With, like, Mortal Kombat.
version. Yeah, it was pretty funny.
Twisted Metal came out in 1995.
That
That is probably the quintessential early PlayStation classic.
That's a great game.
Did you say Wipeout?
Wipeout,
yeah.
Yeah.
Jumping Flash, that was kind of like a interest. It's kind of hard to play now. I finally picked up a copy after all these years, and it's kind of chunky and clunky, and it's a 3D first-person platformer, which is hard to play, but
Awkward.
That was the game that
it's
I
very
said was,
awkward. But it was kind of a cool little your rabbit robot. I mean, it wasn't stupid. It wasn't your modern first-person shooter. Let's go shoot everything sort of game.
Discworld.
Doom had a port on a PlayStation, which is
Did it
probably the
come out
best
there?
of those.
It did. Now, was that the 2-player, and then they came out with a 4-player later? Or was that Diablo? No, Diablo was it ended up coming out later. There was a mouse. You could use the mouse for Doom, couldn't you?
I don't know.
There's a Sony peripheral.
I don't know how you would play without a keyboard and a mouse only, but whatever. They had the PlayStation and Saturn were kind of neck and neck that first year. The Saturn fucked their things up. Sony was managed their things better, and they were hungrier, and they would start to build a little more momentum into '96. But really, we'll go into N64 next in a second, but that early 32-bit market was up for grabs. Anybody could have taken it had they had that one killer app.
And nobody had it.
And nobody had it until Final Fantasy VII, in my opinion, in '97.
And that's the year I got mine.
Yeah, I
me
mean,
too.
and that wasn't even a strong killer app because there's a lot of RPG haters out there. But
That was the
better
one that
than
really
any
put-
other title. That was kind of like the defining point where where PlayStation became the it console. Nintendo hung on, and Sega just quit and started over.
It sold consoles. I mean, my parents
I
were
bought my
not.
PlayStation because of one.
Everybody I knew that had a PlayStation bought it because of Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah.
And that
Or
took
if they
that-
bought it early,
And I
they
thought
bought
I
it because
wouldn't-
Final Fantasy VII was coming.
I thought with having N64, I wouldn't even need a PlayStation or want one, and then Final Fantasy 7.
and that was 2.5 years after the launch. So it was kind of like with this Genesis and Sonic the Hedgehog. There's that early weird period where they're feeling things out, but they certainly didn't fuck up the launch. They got themselves in a good position to do well.
We didn't say Resident Evil because that was a 96.
Resident Evil, I think, was
another-
96,
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a later one.
But that it
Okay.
also
and that was
there
originally developed for Saturn.
Yeah, there was the Resident Evil is on the Saturn.
Developed for
remember-
Saturn. They released it for both, but they had it in mind as a Saturn game at first.
And that was a good scary that was
That one actually might have sold the system more for me.
Yeah.
than Final Fantasy. I
Wasn't
forgot about it.
were the reviews for the Saturn version better than the PlayStation version? Isn't that one of those ones where
don't
even
have
though it was
anything in front of
3D,
me.
No. So there's a
think
reason.
it's- yeah, because-
there's a reason why people were going after the Saturn version. There was motion capture in it. There was voiceovers, and they were awful. People were going after it because it was like a bad B movie. It wasn't actually sucking you in. You were more laughing at the. If I
Okay.
remember correctly.
Well, they were
I
both the
could be
same,
very
weren't
wrong.
they?
No.
No, the PlayStation version has bad acting.
Yeah.
Bad actors.
But it's not the same as the Saturn one. There's a variation
Are
on
you
the Saturn.
getting that confused with the director's cut of the first one?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
I'm not a Resident Evil expert. I don't want to pretend I am
my
one.
if I could talk to my Cletus brother, he would be able to answer these questions. I remember my friend Adam had the Sega Saturn. He had Resident Evil for it, and the green and the blue were out on his television. So we had the lights off and we're playing the television only in red.
Yeah, we need to keep this going here. Let's get to the next piece of the 32-bit era trifecta, the N64
Yes,
in 1996.
September 29, 1996. It sold for $250 with one controller and no game, which everybody bought one game, which was Super Mario 64. And the other game was Pilot Wings 64. Those were the only two launch games
Wow.
for N64. Yeah, that's
what
nuts.
the fuck?
What did it rate as?
A minus.
Yeah, that's the one that got a lot of people. They Game Informer gave it an A minus.
Just because of Mario 64.
Well-
I think people actually do like Pilot Wing 64. I played it recently, and it was very bad. I mean, it has good levels, but it's Pilot Wings. It's really hard to play.
do you like the other Pilot Wings? Because Pilot Wings is very niche.
It's tech demo-y.
I like just flying around the world, so I like Pilot Wings Resort, and I like parts of Pilot Wings 64 actually, but actually like landing the plane, I don't like doing that. They always make it harder than it needs to
So
be.
why is it that like Pilot Wings and Ridge Racer seem to be the games that are always at launch, and I guess Monkey Ball too?
Well, it's like you said, it's tech demo. It's things that can really, kind of show off what they're doing. Pilot Wings in particular has always kind of been kind of cutting edge for 3D for Nintendo to show off what they can do in 3D early on before they really learn and apply it to like their real games like Star Fox and
the
stuff
game
like
was
that.
just cheesy.
So,
But how does it get an A minus?
So,
though?
no. You had a killer app. The PlayStation did not have a killer app. The Sega Saturn did not have a killer app.
Super Mario 64, if that were a killer app, then the N64 would have won the generation, and it would have been a contest.
No, it was comparing it to what was out at the time. That was a killer app. People were willing to spend money
They
on
wanted
that
it
system.
to be.
But the system was designed around that game. You couldn't make any other kind of game good on it, except for that and Banjo-Kazooie.
She's right. It was a killer app. It defined.
Yeah, there are other good
the game
games on the
fucking
system.
sucks. It did not. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. It did not. It brought Mario into 3D, but it completely nerfed Mario series.
Okay, now I completely disagree. There
are a lot of people that never finished Mario 64, never bothered with it, that played the...
What generation? What generation?
Me.
Yeah, your generation.
Yeah.
But the newer generation that got into it, my brother
Those
loved
fucking
that
N64 kids that we hate.
game. My brother's 25 years old.
But that's the thing, is that
it
game...
sold systems.
That game sold systems.
It sold
even
some,
if it didn't
but-
beat it, we're not grading how good the games were. We're grading how good the launch was. And Mario 64 sold consoles.
I don't think it gets an A. I think it gets a B or C.
I don't know. Because it only had 2 games, I wouldn't give it an A.
No, I mean, I'd grade it a B just like I would against the Saturn, and I'd put PlayStation at a B.
And the
begrudgingly.
N64 ended up being a huge failure for Nintendo. Once again, they couldn't keep up their momentum from their SNES.
And again, I disagree with that. Like, working in retail at the time, no, it definitely
Sony sold
very
more
well.
consoles.
Sony sold more consoles.
Way more consoles.
But it wasn't...
Sony was established at the time.
But
Not in video games.
In video games, yeah. When the N64 came out, they'd established themselves for a whole year by that point.
they had the system out.
They-
It was
they had
stable. It had already launched.
Right. They were doing well, but they weren't the
What was
juggernaut yet.
And what was the cost of a PlayStation by that point? Was it still $250? Because a DualShock would have been out by then, wouldn't it?
No.
Later.
DualShock was like 98.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, but other games that came out, and actually, Shadows of the Empire sold me on the system just as much as Mario, I'd say.
Oh yeah,
That came out- that came out in 96?
Anything
No.
else?
Pardon?
That came out in 96 also.
Yeah, right. I think in December, and they actually, they sent out a video for that one to Nintendo Power subscribers. So I was actually even more aware of that than I was of Mario 64. I think right before the system came out.
But Mario 64 is overrated. I'm sorry.
I'm
not sorry.
I
will
think Shadows of the
disagree.
Empire is underrated. Most people.
Agreed. Absolutely. It never hit anything else too.
No,
and
no.
it was a
It was good
fresh
exclusive.
story. That's episode
You have to fight Boba Fett.
5.5. It was
yeah.
right after Empire
Because
Strikes
it doesn't
Back.
have Han Solo because he's frozen in carbonite. So it has
Yeah,
the
so it's-
Dash Rendar, the
Yeah.
naked copy of
Right.
blatant copy of Harrison Ford of Han Solo.
Spoilers.
But it's good.
And was that canon? Did they?
Yes, there was a book.
There was
too.
a book, and there were action figures. I remember the action figures from it as
It
well.
was a really
When
big
did
deal
Mario
for
Kart come out?
97.
Really early 97?
Early 97. like
Okay,
March.
because that was the first game I played on it.
Wavery 64 was another kind of tech demo game that came out in 96. That was the first game I remember having a lens flare in it, which became such a
that's
cliche,
so
but it was
pretentious.
so
Yeah.
cool. I first saw it. Cruising USA, all these games got played a lot because they're the only games. Killer Instinct Gold, Mortal Kombat Trilogy,
Okay, Gold.
and Wayne Gretzky's 3D Hockey. So
Cruising USA.
yeah, Cruising USA was
That was a cool arcade game. It didn't translate as well to the N64.
It didn't translate to anything home very well.
I mean, it could have been like Ridge Racer or Daytona, but
I hate the controller on the N64.
I think everybody did.
No, that's not everybody, but
The thing with the control in the N64 is they were the first ones to really do the analog stick right, and Mario 64 was the first game that got 3D gaming right. I mean, I do not like the N64.
Maybe the controls are
I
good,
don't
but the
like
game
it,
is
but
not
The camera
a good
angles
game.
were nice.
not 3D gaming.
So, yeah.
I'd say 3D, like
3D
Mario type
platformer,
of game.
yeah.
There were
Maybe
other
3D control, like with the camera.
Well, and the camera angles were
but
good.
Yeah, I
that's
mean, that-
technical. That's not fun, and the game was not fun to me. Couldn't.
So,
But the fact that
we're-
they still modern games are still using that that
And
same
modern games
camera
are failing,
system.
and the industry is about to collapse around us because they're still thinking N64 is great.
We've been saying that for 10 years. It's not
We have.
going
just
anywhere
because you
yet.
don't like the Nintendo 64 doesn't mean that the system itself was a flop.
Credit where credit is due.
It's not. It was second place, way behind.
But the PlayStation sold more than any other system itself, like before it. Well, I don't want to say that it's true, but
Well, the PlayStation was
it
very
was second
well
place because
established.
PlayStation was so big.
But the market share that Nintendo was able to pick up was one that
had-
I don't feel like Sony was able to properly represent. I don't feel like there was a killer kids-related, fun for everybody app for the PlayStation that came out like there was. The PlayStation more was
That
an
didn't
adult
happen
system.
till Crash Bandicoot. That was the
Okay,
first
I will
time they
give you
actually
that.
got
Yeah,
a-
because
That was
my
97 also.
Cletus brother had one of those. He had Crash Bandicoot and he really enjoyed that game. And he was young, so he had his N64 and he had that. But I feel like Sony was able to market towards adults. So really, Sony marketing towards you makes a whole lot more sense.
Sony stole Sega's thunder with that.
Sega didn't have
But I-
much. I mean, that was
didn't
Sony came
really
in
have
with
much
a
to steal.
megaphone. Sega came in just talking normally.
Right. Sega had their idea of marketing to older kids. Sony picked up that ball and ran with it more.
Oh, and grabbed
And Nintendo was starting to fight off Sega successfully at the end of the 16-bit era. They just totally dropped the ball at the N64. Had that been a successful launch, it would have destroyed the PlayStation.
GoldenEye.
Had they put it on CD, had they...
No load times.
No.
Oh my god, no load times. I hate load
N64
times
is the
so
first thing
much.
that really didn't have load
But the
times.
prices were one of the reasons why people didn't buy N64s. It was more expensive, and the games are more expensive.
Yeah, but you-
I'm not a big optical media fan either, but I'm just thinking business wise.
They were considerably more expensive.
Games are $70-$80.
But you were spending $50
not across the board.
on the new,
No, I mean, there
you
were
spending $50 on
But
the
then
new games.
The
Sony
average-
they came up with their greatest hits series starting in '96 or '97.
They
average
came out
game
with the greatest
price-
hit series on the Super Nintendo as well.
Not
So they
for
moved that-
$20.
No,
No,
that's
it's what,
true. That's
$30?
30.
The greatest hits series on PlayStation was $20. I remember that being a pretty big deal.
And but they were selling more of those towards adults. They weren't.
Nintendo should have focused on the entire market, not just kids.
Well, and
They
I think
nerfed
that's where
this
Nintendo.
launch.
That's where Nintendo.
Another reason it was a good launch is it was sold out. It was the first time I was aware of a system being sold out. I had to get my friend who worked at KB to get one straight out of the carton. You could not get one when it first came out. So I mean, I'd say that was a successful launch.
I remember working.
A-worthy?
No, I mean,
Okay.
only 2 games. There's only 2 games. I mean, we're all grading it like for different reasons, though. I think.
Yeah, we should have
You
come
know,
up with a better. I didn't want to grade, and that's why I hate grading, because it's all subjective and there's no rhyme or reason to why. But it's not an A.
If you have people that want to buy your system and you can't sell them a system, then your launch failed. Like
Well, no, I think the Wii was an extreme success because they were sold out for 2 years, but that's a different subject. Come to later.
But
Yeah,
I think
I mean,
even
if-
people who have good
Well,
memories
but-
of N64, it was dire when it was out because good game came out every 4 or 5 months.
Yeah.
The people that have good memories, they're remembering the good games that there.
And-
there is a handful
and
of
the
15
games
good
were
games.
sold out. Like Zelda came out in '98.
And Harvest Moon were sold
and,
out
and
for some
you
reason.
couldn't find a copy for a year. It was ridiculous. They whatever success they had, I think ultimately the market was wide open up until, and then Sony finally wrestled it away in '97 with Final Fantasy VII, as well as other games that got other pieces of the market and their cheaper software and their cheaper hardware. But '97 was a turning point, and then Nintendo kind of struggled, and Sega dropped out until the Dreamcast, and Sony just kept going and going and going, and we'll discuss.
Well, they got all the third party support. I mean, Sony had a few, it had the Crash Bandicoots and things like that. But they were able to get Lara Croft and Tomb Raider, and I mean that was a very playable game. You had good games, and they were able to establish a series that we hadn't seen before and start doing successful sequels as well.
Well, and the thing with Sony too is, I think they were really good with the pricing for the dev kits for that, because they really wanted to get people in, so they took the loss to build themselves. And the second thing is they had zero standards for what could be released on the PlayStation.
They had some standards. In fact,
they
didn't
had
they
no
push?
standards.
Didn't
They
they
have-
force 3D? Didn't they ban 2D pretty much, except for budget titles?
I've heard that.
Yeah,
but
the
later
worst,
on-
there are 2D games.
the worst games I have played for any system have always been for the PlayStation. Like when I compare the worst of Super Nintendo and Nintendo
The Wii's
to the
worst.
worst of PlayStation,
Well,
nothing is worse than terrible PlayStation games to me.
They pushed through
But-
anything, but they started Americanizing stuff. So Mobile Gun Light Force or Mobile Light Force, the Charlie's Angels checks.
They Americanized stuff before
They
that.
Yeah, they
but-
Americanized stuff
but-
before.
But nobody knew what that game was until you actually put it in the system, because you look at it and go, oh, girlies. But then you put it into the system, and there was good stuff hidden in that shit, because it really was shovelware.
That's the thing. When you have so many games like that, it's the same thing like with the Wii. When you just open the floodgates and release everything all at once, you get people you wouldn't normally get, because they're going to find one title or two title or a couple weird obscure titles or whatever, and then you're going to start picking up people who like fishing and pick up a PlayStation to play a fishing game. They like hockey or the football, they pick up a PlayStation to play Madden. They like skateboarding, they pick up PlayStation to play Tony Hawk. They just there was something there to appeal to everybody, because there was so much crap released for it. And I think that when you widen the market that far,
No, it didn't work for the Wii.
it did work for the Wii.
No, it didn't.
Look,
Well, wait, hold on.
Look
No,
at-
we're not at the Wii yet.
Yeah, let's go to the next
Dreamcast
one.
time.
Yeah.
Time for the Dreamcast.
My favorite console launch of all time. The only time I actually wanted a console at launch. The Sega Dreamcast released $99.99
My birthday.
for $199.99 for a $2012 equivalent of $274.51. According to Game Informer, they get a B+. The titles available on launch day: Arrow Wings, Air Force Delta, Blue Stinger, Expendable, Flag to Flag, House of the Dead 2, awesome game, Hydro Thunder, really good arcade port, Monaco Grand Prix 2, Mortal Kombat Gold, NFL 2K. The first time I saw that, I thought it was a real freaking football game. I'm not Mr. Sports guy, but that blew me away the first time I saw it. NFL Blitz, Pen Triathlon, worst game ever.
Dude, I love Pen Triathlon.
I love it because it's bad.
It's great.
Power Stone is pretty another cool arcade port. Ready to Rumble Boxing, good arcade boxing game. Sonic Adventure, again, like Mario 64, looks good. I never got into it, but I can see people getting blown away
I like
by
the
it.
levels where you press up. The whole level. Those are good.
Soul Calibur, holy shit, oh my god, what the fuck. A quick story on Soul Calibur. Tatton and I were at a game store near where we worked at the time, and they just imported their Soul Calibur because they only had an import Dreamcast at the time, and Tatton bought one immediately. He was so shocked at how beautiful it was. And then for shits and giggles, we put in Soul Blade next to it on the PlayStation, and we laughed for a good half an hour at how shitty it looked.
No contest.
Let's finish this out. Tokyo Extreme Racer, Trick Style, TNA Motorsports, Hardcore Heat. I think there's more than that on there. There was some issues with some of the games not working. Midway games, I don't think that was a Sega issue.
I think it was a Midway issue.
And I think there were some hardware issues, but it was the most successful launch of all time up to that point. It destroyed what Sony did. I don't have the right number right in front of me, but the strange thing is Dreamcast did so at launch, it never really capitalized on the momentum after that. The hype for the PlayStation 2 was so strong even a year before it launched that if you didn't want a Dreamcast, you probably weren't going to get one after that launch. It pretty much... But the launch itself, they did everything right. The games were great. The price was right. Lots of stuff available. The modem was built in.
And there
4 controller ports.
I don't remember significant delays getting that. I don't remember I remember places like selling out initially, but I remember them getting stock back.
Yeah. They had plenty of stock because the Japanese system had been out for almost a year at that point, so they didn't have shortages from trying to release it in all 3 regions at one time.
And VMUs.
And VMUs.
Well, as compared to the Sega Saturn, which you had to buy, an entirely separate, card to be able to save, or you use the 2032 CR2032 battery.
It was a little
and
gimmick.
then the PlayStation. But compared at the time, it was $19.99. Virtual Pets were
point
huge.
at me.
Too bad Pocket Station never came out here. Though.
Yeah,
that's a hot item.
Yeah,
but the thing with the VMU is that was the first time where you could actually play a football game.
That was the one cool feature. You could look at your own play.
You didn't have to share your play with somebody. With the
you didn't have
person
to
playing
pause
with
to
you.
look at your health in Resident Evil Code Veronica. I like that.
And you got channels out of it too, which at the time Virtual Pets were huge.
And graphic wise, that was the big giant leap in 3D gaming needed.
GD-ROMs.
Well, the size of the disc was one thing, but the graphic quality of the 3D at that point, it was fugly. The PlayStation was pushing itself so hard that you got even slower frame rates with these freaking disgusting, chunky 3D graphics. It just did not look attractive. And Dreamcast came out, and they got everything running at 60 frames a second, and that blew me away.
And the
it
thing
still looks good, too.
Yeah, it still looks good today.
And the thing with the N64 was, even though a lot of the games ran fairly smooth on the N64, the N64 couldn't render
the
in
resolution
full
was
640
half.
by 480. Yeah,
So
they rendered it 32240 and stretched it.
Oh, and the VGA box. Oh my god! The first time we plugged in our Dreamcast into a computer monitor, holy fuck!
Did they release the VGA box stateside? I don't remember.
Yeah,
I was so import heavy at the time.
Yeah, I remember seeing it at game stores. I don't know, maybe they imported them all, but it was compatible. The one thing that they fucked up was the no gun.
That was the stupidest
in
decision
the United States.
ever. How do you launch with House of the Dead 2 and don't release a
No
first-party
light
light gun? That was awful.
Yeah.
Wait, they
fucking
made the decision?
Columbine.
Sega made the decision?
Yeah,
or there
Sega
was a
did not do
okay.
you can even import a first-party light gun from Japan and it won't work in a US Dreamcast.
Yeah, it's I
And
don't
the
know what
third-party
their
light
problem
guns
with
are
it was,
meh
but-
at best.
Yeah, they're terrible.
But if you're gonna give any system an A for launch, the Dreamcast is it. Now, future success and Sega basically went all in on the Dreamcast and lost, but they threw everything they had at it and did everything right.
Yeah, the only thing that killed them was not having a DVD drive.
Yep, that's it. I think when the PlayStation 2 came out, I was working at the GameStop at the time.
There was no EA.
It would have cost way too much.
It would have cost too much.
People came in and wanted to buy PlayStation 2s because you could sell them on the fact that you could watch DVDs in it, and DVDs were beginning to establish
themselves. That's PlayStation 2, and that's our next console. But let's give final grades on the Dreamcast before we...
Now, the Dreamcast, the DVDs weren't as big of a deal at the time. So, you know, it was
When did The Matrix come out as a movie?
99.
So
May,
was it 99?
April. It came out right before episode 1, so 99.
Okay,
yeah.
So that hadn't come out on DVD yet, or just came out on DVD? Because I remember, we'll go back. That's another PlayStation thing. But in Japan, The Matrix on DVD was like the best-selling PlayStation 2 game for several months. But I mean, we're gonna have to compare back and forth to the PlayStation 2 because the hype machine for that thing was incredible, and yet that first generation of PlayStation 2 games paled to the Dreamcast.
I think Soul Calibur is the best launch game out of any of these.
Yeah,
I think Soul Calibur is the best launch game from any system we've had.
And even for people that aren't fighting game fans, NFL 2K was also a huge
those were
killer app.
Well, you compare them to the Maddens at the time, which I think had started to stagnate.
They weren't even 3D yet. They were still 2D. Madden 98 was 2D. Maybe 99 was the first one that was 3D. Because on PlayStation, they had the 989 Sports NFL game was like the first 3D one, and it was starting to outsell
Game Day.
Madden. And it wasn't even really 3D. Like, it played 3D, but everybody looked like cardboard cutouts. Like, it was awful.
Yeah, it was that.
That's the worst when it's 3D with the two like Xenogears. Was that?
No, that was Madden. Madden had the 3D field with the flat,
and then you had the fake
right.
shading on top of it.
And some of that stuff I didn't mind. Like I liked the Xenogears.
Not in a sports game, though.
Not in a sports game, no. Unless it was like Tech Mobile or something.
But if you either go all cartoon or all realism, you don't try to mix the two.
Exactly.
So what do we say for Dreamcast then?
I'd give it an A.
I'd give it an A.
Okay. See, N64 not an A, Dreamcast an A. That was my biggest beef with this whole Game Informer article.
Chris is going to give it an S.
Yeah, I'm going to give it an S rank. Crazy Taxi! And that came out in 2000, and oh my god, I couldn't wait to play that. And I couldn't wait to play Virtua Tennis.
This system came
Phantasy
out when
Star Online.
I'm sorry, I was too busy racing
I'm jerking
chocobos
off
at the
behind
time.
it.
I'm leaving the room now.
Freshman in college, so I came to Ohio State, came to Columbus, and there's two people in my hall that had Dreamcast. So that's a good memory for me of when I first came to college, playing Soul Calibur every night, and then Crazy Taxi every night. Yeah,
well, it was crazy when because I imported my Dreamcast like not long after the Japanese launch for it, and I had picked up. I wanted to get like a really nice TV because this is where I was really kind of getting into game collecting.
Oh, I remember this.
And,
that was awesome.
This is so hilarious. So I bought this Sony Vega TV. It was like $2,000, I think. It was ridiculously expensive. And I get it home, and I started hooking the consoles up to it, and it was one of the Trinitron flat screens, and it like warped the top of the screens, like the image was coming through curved to the top, and I was like so upset about it. So I ended up having them like take it back, and so the Dreamcast was one of the worst ones. So I took the Dreamcast into the store to hook it up because I wanted to find a TV that looked nice on. And well, this is like 6 months before it came out stateside, and the entire store was like circled around. Like all the sales reps were there. People who were browsing saw what was going on and came over, and I had this like crowd following me around, watching me hook up like Sonic to this thing, and it was nuts.
Wow moment, like the last leap. We haven't had leaps since then. It's just been incremental stuff. Even the next gen stuff that when we ever get our PS4 and Xbox 8, 720, 95 XP, it's
98 SC.
Yeah, Zune or Xbox Zune. It's not gonna look that much better than what we currently have. It's really not gonna blow anybody away like the Dreamcast did in 1999. So let's go to what killed the Dreamcast, the PlayStation 2. And that who had that one? Was that 10?
Yeah, it was Senor Tatton.
No, I had PlayStation 2. Ugh. I do have PlayStation 2. That makes me sad.
Way to study.
All right, so PlayStation 2 launched for $299. Launched in October of 2000. Did not have a pack-in, so congratulations, Sony, for continuing to kill the pack-in.
$399.04 and $2012.
So, actually, what's funny about this is every Sony system is cheaper than the PS3 when the PS3 launched. When you compare it to like today dollars.
Yeah, except for the Neo Geo, there's your pretty much
Yeah. So, all right, launch titles: Armored Core 2, DOA 2 Hardcore, and I will make a note. Dead or Alive on the Dreamcast was significantly better than Dead or Alive on the PS2. And that was, not just us being biased. Like, that was, heralded from all of the online review sites that it was cleaner and it played better. Dynasty Warriors 2, ESPN International Track and Field, ESPN Winter X Games Snowboarding, Eternal Ring, Evergrace, Fantavision, Gun Griffin Blaze, Kessin, Madden NFL 2001, Midnight Club, MotoGP, NHL 2001, Orphan, Cue Ball Billiards Master, Ready to Rumble Boxing Round 2, Ridge Racer 5, Silent Scope, Smuggler's Run, SSX, Street Fighter EX3, Summoner, Swing Away, Tekken Tag Tournament, or as it was called at the time, Tekken Jag Tournament, because the graphics were so jaggy, there were like sharp edges on everything. Time Splitters, Unreal Tournament, Wild Wild Racing, and X Squad.
No Fantavision?
No, I said Fantavision.
Okay, yeah.
Fireworks Simulator.
Again, everybody bought it because of the DVD drive.
The DVD drive.
DVD
and the blue
players
LED
were not
light.
ubiquitous yet.
They have blue LED. And the tray was one of the.
Yeah, it was like 3DO style, like front loading tray.
Yeah, those were
First generation.
Those is fancy.
Well, and there was the FireWire 4-pin FireWire port on the front of the original ones.
Yeah, 2 USB ports, 4-pin FireWire.
No online capabilities out of the box.
Yeah, out of the box, 0 online capabilities.
So
a lot of games looked better than the Dreamcast.
No, they didn't.
But nothing really
jagged.
blew the Dreamcast away.
Right.
I mean, there were some games that
It was nominal.
that could like compare or like hold a higher frame rate, or the textures were better, but the Dreamcast still beat it. Like, the Dreamcast was a better gaming system at the time.
everything just seems blurrier on the PS2 to me compared to Dreamcast. I don't know what.
Yeah.
Can anybody explain that? Like any game from the PS2
there was
era
less video
compared to-
RAM, so they couldn't load as much. I don't know. I'm not going to try to
Yeah.
I can understand the tech articles if I read them, but trying to explain them, but it was crap. And I think that it did well. Like, the launch did okay. They were sold out everywhere, but I wonder if that was deliberate with a low supply, because they had the Japanese launch wasn't that far before the US launch. It was only a matter of months, right? It wasn't a whole year. When was it launched in Japan?
I have to take a look and see. I remember
March 4th, and
yeah, because I remember Ben had his for a while
so that's
before the
6
US
months
launch.
versus a year for the Dreamcast. Really, Grand Theft Auto 3 that came out in 2001 was the big. Okay, now let's get a PlayStation 2.
Metal Gear Solid, I think, sold a lot of systems. Too.
yes.
Metal Gear Solid 2.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It came out.
And,
But that was a
before.
disappointment.
It was.
Everybody-
The demo was better than the game.
yeah, and Zone Ender sold a lot of systems because of
that
the
was the
demo.
first game I
And Final
bought
Fantasy
for
X
PS2.
was what 7 was,
Right.
and
So here's the thing: I worked Toys R Us for the PS2 Christmas launch. We could not keep those in stock. Like there were people who were stocking those like crazy. There were people who would not buy anything else. Like they came in, they wanted a PS2. We don't have them. We have a $99 Dreamcast now. We've got the $199 N64. No, I'm going to come back and try to stock a PS2. People who did get PS2s were buying on average 2 to 3 games for it. The games were garbage. They were not as good as what was on the Dreamcast, and I could not sell Dreamcasts. I love the Dreamcast. I could not sell them.
It was Tickle Me Elmo. It was the big thing. It was Sony's.
It was DVD player.
It was and it
I was part of the problem,
It
I
was
guess.
Sony's
agreed.
established. All right, the PlayStation was awesome. We're expecting more of the PlayStation. That's bound to happen with it. Even if the stuff that comes out on it now is rubbish. If I didn't jump into the Dreamcast, golly, it looks better than the original PlayStation. So, if I'm a
If you're
kid,
diehard Sony, then
and
it was a great upgrade.
we got ours used years later. Honestly, it was one of those. we got it because it had the DVD, and my brother was interested in the games. I got Final Fantasy X. I never beat Final Fantasy X. I have never really played anything else on the PlayStation 2.
Faulty hardware too. Not as bad as a particular Microsoft product that we'll talk about in a little bit, but lots of first gen PlayStation 2 is complete garbage. I mean, I think it was probably worse than the flip them upside down of the PlayStation 1.
It was sold on its DVD capabilities, and mine does not play dual layer discs, which is most DVDs.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And there were a lot back then too.
My first PlayStation 2 wouldn't play the CD games or the PlayStation 1 games, the purple coated PlayStation 2 games are on CD-ROM.
It should have at the beginning.
It wouldn't load them.
I
had to like put it in and out and in and out and in and out after 20 tries.
The laser gets knocked out of alignment, which is a problem. They also marketed it as you should, we're going to put it in a vertical stand, and you can buy this awesome Sony-related vertical stand and make it blue, and it's awesome and pretty. It's terrible for the system to have it sideways, because if you don't have it completely level, you can have problems.
Right now.
You can have problems where the laser does not hit the way it's supposed to, like just the way that it's put together. It looks neat, but it really should be horizontally kept.
Get the horizontal stand too.
And there is a horizontal stand. They ended up doing one.
Stand.
Well, and so there's another system that is notorious for doing that we'll talk about later.
So
the PlayStation 2 is one of those huge selling systems. I think
it's just DVD tech. The DVD movie.
No, here's why the PlayStation 2 was a huge selling system, and they sold so many in the lifetime of the system. Because everybody had to buy 2 or 3. Everybody.
That's like the first
everybody
one.
had to buy 2 or 3.
That's how the 360 and the
I've got I have my original PlayStation. So the Super Nintendo is a sad story, but a lot of people were able to keep their original hardware. I really think the PlayStation 2 was the first one that people came back and kept buying again.
The original PlayStation was like that too. Sony was the first company to develop the disposable console.
Yeah. And people kept coming back to buy it over and over again. I worked at the Stop at the time, so
you invest in that library of games. You don't have a choice. Your system dies. You have to go buy another one.
I wouldn't have known that, but I obviously believe you since you worked at the store. I never knew anybody that had a dead PlayStation 2.
Oh, golly, yeah. Well, I also moved on to the Swap later on, and when I did so, we had a lot of repairs. A lot of people coming back to get their systems repaired because you want it to keep going, and it wasn't always. Well, the problem is that it's covered in cockroaches. A lot of times the problem was the system was not durable. The Dreamcast, albeit yes, you can have the laser problems, but I really think the condition of the discs could be worse than what the PlayStation 2 would be able to read. The PlayStation 2...
Dreamcast did use those really shitty, thin, layered discs.
Yeah.
They weren't very good. You
could floig in them really easy.
They take off the top foil and all the information.
But they weren't... The PlayStation 2, I think, was more fickle of hardware.
Yes.
So
I agree.
When it comes to the launch on it is such a ho-hum, blur
If you
launch.
take away the DVD drive of the PlayStation 2, it's total shit. It's an F.
Yeah, if they didn't let you play DVDs... and you had to buy like a DVD upgrade or whatever, it would not have sold the way
the DVD platform in general, because everybody wanted to watch movies crystal clear without rewinding.
Right.
And it was... I can't remember. Was it still the cheapest DVD player at the time?
Pretty much.
It wasn't much more expensive than,
it
an average
didn't last,
DVD player.
But that first year it was, and then those we started getting flooding with the $100, then the $50, then the $30 DVD
yeah, but that's all you need is that first year.
But that first year,
the first year, and specifically that first Christmas, that's what you need.
Right.
And Sega didn't recover and dropped out of the race when 2001 rolled around with the next 2 systems coming out. And it broke my heart, and I've still been cynical ever since, and it's been 12 years. But I got Gunlord this week, and my new Dreamcast game just came out. Fucking awesome.
I will say that SSX was a fantastic launch game, and that's
probably
what sold it
the
for
cream
me.
of the crop. Yes.
Yeah, it was wonderful. It was a brand new franchise. It played very well. It was a pick up and play. It was arcade feel.
I hate that game.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Oh.
I don't really understand the...
I'm not good at it either.
Does doing
it's like
tricks
Tony Hawk.
get you anything? Does it give you extra speed or point? I don't know how it plays. I just don't understand it. I guess
it's that was.
It should be easy. Just go downhill. That's it. But
yeah, you can get extra. You get extra speed and stuff from doing tricks, and you get point multipliers and stuff like that. And you can actually watch your points. And
sorry, the only time I ever did snowboarding was Final Fantasy VII.
Oh, yuck.
Yeah.
But I will acknowledge that is the game that most people talk about as being the best launch game.
It was a very ho-hum launch. So yeah, if you're gonna say it, I guess. You say C?
To me, it was the only game that was redeeming for it. I mean, I bought it just because I had the opportunity to. I mean, people were consistently selling PS3s for $1,000 at Christmas. That was like the going rate for
this is before the economy tanked, before 9/11. I think this was the peak of our mania.
Tickle me, Elmo.
As they say in the Matrix, the peak of human Western civilization was this era, and that the PlayStation 2 is really the proof of that. So,
well,
I this is like it's a schizophrenic. I couldn't give it a score. The Game Informer gives it a C. It probably would have given it an F had the system actually.
I'm okay with that C.
I won't even grade it. I'll just say that the system itself F, the DVD drive A, and the success obviously proves it.
C.
Yeah,
middle of the road.
I go with the F considering the DVD player didn't work.
Yeah,
I mean, I'd give it.
And there was not a good game for almost a year. I think Eco maybe was the first great game for the system.
I mean,
Grand Theft Auto 3 in 2001 was the big, huge game.
I guess I would give it a D.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't give it an F, but if you've got people who are waiting to buy your system and you cannot give them systems, you are losing sales. Like that is not a perfect launch.
But you're also, if you are able to sell through, I mean, there's a level where you can make too many of them and not be able to sell them. You can have a problem where, you know, the supply is greater than the demand. When you go ahead and you up the demand on it, you will guarantee the next shipment will be sold out.
Which is good business, but bad for consumers. That's
It
a failed
is.
launch.
It is. Well, but so I don't know that Sony would give a damn.
No, they
honestly.
don't.
They want to sell their systems.
They don't care about
guarantees-
consumers. They've shown over 15 years almost of game consoles that they don't care about consumers. They care about selling systems and making money.
That's true. But on November 18th, 2001, the GameCube came out. Segway.
Who has a GameCube?
Yay.
So,
Who has a GameCube?
Who has a GameCube? I have a 3.
I had a GameCube. I
No,
got
who has GameCube report?
me.
Oh.
Oh,
That's
sorry.
what
I
I
was
said.
like, who owns one? I was like, we all own one, I think. Yeah.
But it was a GameCube.
So, all right, launch-wise, meh, it was born to play. The discs were smaller. It actually used the mini disc format, and the discs could only hold 1.5 gigabytes as opposed to the 8.5 gigabyte discs that the PS2 and Xbox could do. It did not have DVD playback. There was no widespread online on it, and at launch there was not online for it. It did not do the widescreen. It didn't have digital audio output on it. Okay, launch games. Acclaim's All-Star Baseball 2001. Like a 67% reviews. It didn't do. It was meh. Ubisoft's Batman Vengeance, based on the new Batman Adventures. It was average. Crazy Taxi by Acclaim. It was, again, average. It was okay.
Wasn't a good port.
Yeah. Acclaim's Dave Mirra Freestyle BMX 2, another kind of average. It did a little better than some of the other games, but meh. Ubisoft's Disney's Tarzan Untamed, which another average. It's Tarzan. I don't know that franchise was great in the first place. Nintendo's Luigi's Mansion, which was probably the killer app on the system. Well, one of the killer apps on the system.
Made everybody say, "Where's Mario?" Though.
Yeah, that wasn't good.
Yeah.
It was not a killer
It was
app.
Madden 2002 by EA. NHL Hits 20-02.
Also hits with a Z.
Yeah, Hits
It's
by Midway. It was a hockey game. And that's all I have to say about that. Star Wars Rogue Squadron 2. There's a killer app. Albeit not really
A
killer, and
sequel.
when you look at the... Yeah, but still, it was a nice port to something
It
new.
is a good series.
It's something
for
that
Star
you
Wars
pick up
games.
if you buy a GameCube.
Yeah. Sega's Super Monkey Ball Arcade.
Yes.
That's my favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3, which did well. Wave Race Blue Storm, which was too close to the N64 one.
It's another kind of tech demo-y.
Kind of. It had water in the camera, a little splash effects,
lens flares.
Yeah.
But so the system had Batman Vengeance, Crazy Taxi, Dave Mira's Freestyle BMX 2, Luigi's Mansion, Star Wars Rogue Squadron 2, Rogue Leader, and Super Monkey Ball. All of those went player's choice. So they were good selling games in the history of the system.
But that's because there's nothing else available, and almost all of those you could find other versions on other consoles.
Yeah, it just...
Super Monkey Ball is probably the only original game on that list.
And Luigi's Mansion.
Yeah.
And Wave Race.
But I will say that Super Smash Bros. Melee came out very soon after launch, and while technically not a launch title...
That sold systems.
That sold systems, and I think that if you add that in there, you bump it up
still
a ladder.
a system seller.
Yeah.
Well, and so the system sold 21.74 million systems worldwide. The N64 sold 33 million systems.
See,
so the GameCube did not do as well as the
continued
N64.
downtrend. I argue that the N64 is a failure. You're saying the GameCube is a failure, but we both can agree that the downward trend was there.
I'm not saying it was a failure. I, again, was working at
But Nintendo made a profit, too. They weren't losing money with that stuff.
Well, that was the thing with Sony, is Sony tends to release hardware that doesn't have... that they're losing money on. So, they sell something, and they lose money every system. They just want to go ahead and get themselves established.
Razor and Blades model.
It's a terrible idea. Nintendo doesn't do that.
They didn't.
Well, they didn't. I don't know if they're going to do
the
Wii U is going to be. It's going to have to be.
That
or
hurts.
3DS with that price cut. Well,
yeah,
3DS too.
But Super Monkey Ball, that was the first game. I went with a friend to buy it on launch night. I had to buy it myself, but we played Super Monkey Ball way longer than we should have that night. So that was a very impressive.
Originally
game.
slated to be a Dreamcast game, by the way. Just have to
and it was the first we gasped when we saw this. I mean, we knew it was a Sega game, obviously, but still, when that logo comes up on the screen on the Nintendo system,
oh my
god, yeah. So that's still one of my favorite games. The Monkey Ball 1 and 2, so good, and then every other game in the system has been a complete failure.
In series, yeah.
Has Sagan
in the series,
yeah.
When I first played the GameCube, and it's another one that we imported, I was as shocked with the graphics on the GameCube as I was on the Dreamcast.
Really?
Yeah, no, 100%.
I was disappointed. Sony or Sega had just announced that Dreamcast was no longer going to be like they were going to sell through Christmas, but they were going to close down shop. So you basically had to choose one of the new systems, and among the three, my horse was still with Nintendo because they were a game company, and Microsoft and Sony were not. I was pissed at Sony for kicking the Dreamcast to the curb, but I was going to ride on Nintendo, and there was some hope
you were
there.
Pissed at Sony for kicking the Dreamcast to the curb?
Yeah, I was pissed at Sega too.
Sega.
Oh. No, you were pissed at
for
Sony for
kicking
usurping
its butt,
the
and
Sega.
then for Sega for
Thank
kicking
you.
itself to the curb.
I'm so angry I can't even use the proper English. But my horse was going to be the GameCube because it was cheaper than the Xbox, and I hated Microsoft at the time and thought that they were fucking around. But so my horse was the GameCube, and I picked up when I bought my GameCube Super Monkey Ball and Super Smash Bros. Melee.
When did Animal Crossing hit?
The next year, 2002.
Like September.
Okay.
And Microsoft had a big hand in the death of the Dreamcast because Sega built the OS and everything on Windows CE. And the day that Microsoft announced the Xbox was coming out was the same day Microsoft announced that they were no longer going to support Windows CE for the Dreamcast.
Yeah,
no more SDKs. You guys are on your own.
Sega killed the Dreamcast because Sega was a shittily run company.
But Microsoft had a hand in it.
But that's what you're supposed to do in your competitor. This is me 10 years down the road, understanding that that's business and that's how things go. But had Sega had something that everybody wanted to play back in the 32-bit era, then it wouldn't have been an issue. But this is all water under the bridge, and I don't want to do what ifs. But
I don't know that that's business. It's dirty business.
It's dirty business, but right. That's what happens. And they had a good product, they would have survived. Apple had good products, they survived. Nintendo had good products, they survived. Sega did not have good products, they didn't survive.
Wait, are you saying that the N64 and the GameCube were good products?
They were profitable enough to keep them their head above water. Yeah,
I agree with you about the graphics on GameCube, and there are some shockingly good looking games on the GameCube that are way better than anything on Xbox and PlayStation 2, comparable to Dreamcast.
Mario Sunshine is still, I think, just a gorgeous game. I love that game.
Metroid Prime.
I like it. Yeah, Metroid Prime.
Well, the Super Smash Brothers and Animal Crossing
Smash
didn't look
Brothers.
good,
I
but
shed
the
a tear for
gameplay.
Smash Brothers. Yeah, I'm not even that good at it. I'm not one of those kids that plays in the tournaments and everything. But listening to all the Nintendo delving into its history, because that's the first time they started getting their history. Their history gasm.
I wish I could play it more. Like I didn't play it much back in the day, but just to get all the
trophies.
trophies.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, so the system had fun games. The launch-wise, though, so I would say Luigi's Mansion. I ended up. So I saw the system at a convention. Somebody had imported it, and I saw one of the systems at this convention hooked up, and it blew my mind. Because I had a PlayStation. I didn't have anything other than that. So, we got the PS2. We got the PS2 late. I'd say we probably got it in 2001. And I think the GameCube was more impressive than that.
So the Game Informer gave it a B-, and I will toe the line saying if you include Smash Brothers in that launch lineup, it's definitely a B. You take away Smash Brothers, I give it a C.
I give it a B. I like Star Wars, still do, and Monkey Ball, of course.
Star Wars will sell
expansion.
systems.
Yeah, I'd give it a B. I'm not gonna. It doesn't need a Mario game to be able to.
And the
to sell
controller
it.
was much better.
Yeah, the controller was fantastic.
Well,
the D-pad was terrible,
the
but-
button layout wasn't the best, but it was definitely the sticks were really great.
Well, it was
And the
better
triggers,
than the N64. Golly,
it was better
pants.
than the N64. So let's go to the Xbox. Who's got that bad boy?
Okay. What day did we say? Date did we say for GameCube though?
November 18th, 2001.
Okay, so this one came out 3 days earlier, November 15th.
Oh.
Oh, we messed up.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I waited in line with this same guy. He bought an Xbox, and then 3 days later he bought a GameCube.
Wow.
That was
Nice.
insane. And he was in college, so yeah. It was, but anyway, it launched at. Oh no, I don't have a price even for that. Maybe I couldn't find one. Find one for me, Tatton. Okay. The launch game. Thank you.
$199 or $299.
Launch games were Halo, Combat Evolved, Oddworld, Munch's Odyssey, Dead or Alive 3, Project Gotham Racing, NFL Fever 2002, Air Force Delta Storm, Mad Dash Racing, Cell Damage, which is that, god awful.
I like Cell Damage. Cell Damage was fun.
Arctic Thunder, which is that a
Hydro Thunder on Ice.
okay, Fusion Frenzy, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, which I thought was a
2X.
2X. Okay.
It was like an enhanced version with some other extra shit.
Still, I think wasn't Tony Hawk 4 out by this point?
3.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
They didn't get
three.
3 right away. They had to wait because they had exclusivity or something with Nintendo.
And then 4x4 EVO 2. I think there's only 2 games worth talking about. Halo and so Halo, that was a big system seller, of course.
That was the only system seller.
The killer.
Yeah.
That's the killer app.
Um,
That's a killer app.
and
so.
it got straight 10s in EGM, which I was just angry about. I was a big GameCube fan back then, so I was just annoyed that they liked Xbox better. And I have a magazine here that has Xbox versus GameCube, and they come out on top with Xbox.
Those fucking controllers, that first generation.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Big
the Duke
Dukes.
was horrible.
They did have long cords, like way longer cords than
and those breakaways.
and the
Neato
breakaways.
banditos.
Yeah, I actually measured a cord. It was on a S controller though, so I can't verify. Like the original controller is 10 feet compared to PS2's 8 feet. So that was, and also the cables coming out the back. I don't know if they were better or not, but they felt better. They were thicker. Like
The power cable, not so much. The power cable was pretty thin. It popped out of mine a lot, but
Okay.
but the video cable was really good.
Yeah,
Nice thick, and it was a broad connection, so it wasn't one of those thinner ones.
HDMI-like
It
connection.
felt like it felt very solid going into
Yeah.
the system.
Yeah.
It was a good connection.
It did launch at $299.
Okay, thank you. And Oddworld,
Shit.
I like it. I like the series too, and I think it's a good addition to the series. And I think I don't know what Microsoft was thinking, paying so much money to get that as an exclusive, but at least for me and a few people that were fans of the series, that was a big deal.
Well, I think that's the thing is like they were trying to they came in not having anything in this market. And so, they have to establish themselves, and they put, all of, everything they had behind, stealing Bungie away from Apple. I shouldn't say it that way. From Bungie selling out and going to Microsoft and leaving Apple. But
not only that, but then also Microsoft
needed,
threw money at them.
Yeah, like they,
and this is Apple at its lowest of its lows at this point. The iMac wasn't, when that deal happened, wasn't the iMac just coming out and they were starting their resurrection?
No, they were in the heart of the resurrection.
When the original iMac came out in '98,
System 10 was out there.
Because we watched Steve Jobs like demo Halo with the Bungie exec like at the Apple Store, like satellite streaming. So they were they were in the heart of it.
Well, that was an established PlayStation, and the PlayStation 2 was out at the time. This is showing that Microsoft can do what PleStation does. They were better.
They were stealing what Sony stole from Sega. So I mean, it was that same, and that's
well, that's the thing, is that like PlayStation didn't have a title that defined it. I mean, when you think PlayStation, nobody thinks one game,
right?
Because there were,
Grand Theft Auto became that game, but
it didn't.
But Grand Theft Auto ended up on other things too,
right? But at that first year, at that time in 2001, Grand Theft Auto 3 was the definitive next gen game that pushed the PlayStation 2 into a gaming console, not just a DVD player. But the Game Informer gives it a B. I mean, they had a higher price point than the other two, because I think Sony had dropped their price by this point.
No DVD playback directly out of the box.
Well, that was the nickel and diming shit. Yeah,
they nickel and dimed.
Well,
but they did have DVD. But they did have internet connectivity.
Wait, how do you play DVDs on the Xbox?
You have to buy the remote control.
The remote control has a dongle that goes in the fourth port,
and it allows it.
Yeah.
And it's a software like unlock key.
Yeah,
which is ridiculous.
I never even tried. I guess.
So I'm gonna say the remote control on that guy wasn't bad. The playing DVDs on the PlayStation 2 with the controller, awful. I stop those things all the time. It's like I'm watching Rocky Horror Picture Show and I'm starting it over and I'm starting it over and I'm starting it over. Like, nah. Yeah. Like having the remote on that butt, you were also having to pay for the remote to do it.
But that remote was like a little crappy $10 repurposed generic remote control you get at Radio Shack.
Right. I remember selling them with systems, though.
Yeah, they were.
I remember people coming in. I want the Xbox, I want a Halo, and I want this stupid piece of crap.
The cost of the unit was they were selling you the functionality,
right? But they were losing so much money on those machines. They had to nickel and dime you to make their money back. So I mean, they got their foot in the door and didn't fail. So, and with Halo, the game, I would say a B sounds like a fair grade to me.
Sounds all right.
Yeah.
That game was.
I'm not a first-person shooter fan, so I couldn't give a shit. A lot of people loved it, and you can't argue with that.
Yeah. So you take the people who all right, GoldenEye was awesome, and I haven't really seen anything since GoldenEye. Oh, you mean this is amazing? And it was amazing. It was really a graphical step forward. It was a very good-looking, next step. So it was nice.
Good music too. I like it.
And Microsoft was established as a computer company, so if you didn't abjectly hate them out of the door, they didn't have a bad launch.
It wasn't bad. I just don't think it was great. I mean, I guess I would give it a B because it had Halo, but I really want to give it a C. I mean, I didn't think that it was a better launch than the Dreamcast or the GameCube or anything. It just seemed like it was one of those, like when we were in our 16-bit era, it just seemed like it was an average launch. Like it came out, people bought it, and it didn't do great. It didn't do terrible. It was just average.
Take away Halo. What do you think it is? Do you think it even survives?
I don't think it survives without Halo. I don't think it would get.
It gets a meh. I mean,
I don't think it would get the third-party support if it didn't have Halo.
Right.
Halo is what put Xbox in homes.
And sold the system.
So let's stick with Microsoft. We'll jump to the 360. And Game Informer gave this a B-. Now,
when did it launch?
2005.
And actually, what's funny about this is Microsoft was the last of that era and the first of the next era.
Right. They wanted to get their foot in the door first for whatever reason. First things first, they launched at, was it $299, $399 for their two bundles? Yeah.
Yeah.
$299 for the nerfed version, which nobody bought because there's no hard drive.
There's nothing.
Yeah. If you bought the nerfed version, then you have to spend money on memory cards. So
that wasn't the arcade version.
They didn't call it arcade yet. It was called the Core at that point.
The Core. And then the Pro,
full,
wasn't it?
The full, it just says here. I mean,
Yeah, the Pro 20 gig hard drive.
Was $399.
Wireless controllers.
One wireless controller with the full, a wired controller with the core. Do they even sell the wired controllers anymore?
Yes.
Yeah, they do.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
Interesting. The launch games disc-wise got Amped 3, Call of Duty 2, Condemned, FIFA 6, Gun, Cameo, which was the big failure for Rare, Madden 06,
one of
NBA 2K6,
Starting the stream of failures for
and
Rare.
NBA Live 06, Need for Speed Most Wanted, NHL 2K6, Perfect Dark Zero, another romp
from Rare.
from Rare, Peter Jackson's King Kong, Project Gotham Racing 3, Quake 4, Ridge Racer 6, there's Ridge Racer again, Tiger Woods 06, and Tony Hawk's American Wasteland.
Ridge Racer's my favorite tech demo.
Ridge Racer 6 was better than 5. 5 on a PlayStation 2, by the way, was fucking
awful.
terrible. Lots of sweeping camera angles and overly done, pretentious bullshit. 6 went back to being an arcade game, racing game. Not a good one, but better than 5.
I like 6. I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, I just keep thinking Outrun 2006.
6 was I don't know if it was the first one or not, but it was the first one where I was able to do a 360-degree drift.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
But here's the funny part: the downloadable games available when it first. Of course, my list scrolled all the way to the top. I go back down here. The Xbox Live Arcade, Bankshot Billiards 2, Bejeweled 2, Gauntlet, Geometry Wars, best game of the launch.
Geometry Wars was why I bought an Xbox 360.
And
I'm not joking. Like
you spent $400 to play fucking Geometry Wars.
I spent $500 to play it because I
gas.
bought one third party,
Right.
and I'd actually we had driven to Cincinnati trying to see if we could find one because we couldn't find one in Columbus, and then Bert ended up having somebody wait in line somewhere, got a voucher, and so
You're
drove
making it
back.
sound like it's heroic. This is depressing.
I wanted to play Geometry Wars. That was the best game that system had. It was wonderful, and I loved it.
People of Geometry Wars, my husband loves you.
Yeah. Then, Howard Wood, Backgammon, Hearts and Spades, Hexic HD, Joust, Mutant Storm Reloaded, Outpost, Outpost, I don't know what the fuck that is.
Outpost Kaloki X.
Is that Outpost? Okay.
It was okay.
I lost my list again because I went back to the top on Google Docs. Oh, those are podcasting gold, people. Scroll.
Scroll.
So did this get a grade?
Robotron 2084. So, a couple of classic games on there. But really...
There's a couple more beneath that, too.
Oh, Smash TV, Wiki, Fable of Souls, and Zuma Deluxe.
So there are casual games in there. There's the PopCap stuff that, once you play it, you
that
get
don't
addicted.
translate well to an Xbox. It's better with
Not
PC and
so
mice.
much, actually, no.
But
Sometimes
Jewel is
they
way
do.
better with the mouse.
That's true.
Peggle
Peggle is good.
wasn't a launch, though.
No, it wasn't. But
But nothing on launch. It just every time somebody bought one of these things, it just pissed me off. It was too expensive. No games for it. This is before Red Ring of Death took over, and that finally started surfacing the next year.
Mm-hmm.
X clamps.
I can't believe this got a B. This is totally D material here. They did not. And the 360 started off early. They got a jump on the other two systems and failed to capitalize on that early jump and get a lot of people on board. They should have at least had a Halo 3, even if it wasn't that great.
Well, so here's the thing: they still couldn't have. They didn't have enough systems at launch. So for me, that gets down points. But what do we see with the big trend here? One of the big first titles is Call of Duty. This is really I think what brings the Call of Duty resurgence is Call of Duty 2, Xbox Live support out of the gate. That was the one that everybody I remember was playing online. That was the first one that I actually played and bought.
Right.
And they were.
It just seemed already cliched because weren't there a shitload of World War II games up to that point? Because I remember Medal of Honor on the PlayStation 1.
Yeah, no, there were tons of them.
And that was being the first. Oh, that's kind of cool. It's World War II, and they got out the motifs and the Germans shouting crap and the grenades that were sticks and all that authenticity of World War II. And History Channel at that point was nothing but Hitler shows. But that was the best game at launch. that's pretty pathetic. Wasn't Call of Duty 2 available elsewhere?
Just for the PC, I think.
Oh,
I
it wasn't
thought the Xbox version had like.
Okay, well, whatever. It totally does not give a...
yeah.
And the funny thing in the Game Informer article, it says, doesn't draw much excitement anymore, the launch list. The 18 games listed garnered an average of 8.2 score from Game Informer. Those were all bought? Really? I mean, that's the only way that could be explained.
Well, by this time, we'd already hit the point where there was a divide between hardcore gamers and not hardcore gamers.
The Wii really lit a fire of that.
Well, and
It lit a fire under, but the fire started with this. If you weren't playing games that were uber violent at this point, then you were a Tuck Kitty and played a Tuck GameCube.
Was the Xbox Live, was that fully functional right out of the box, or did it take a little bit longer to finally get the
fully functional out of the
So they
box?
had a
that
lot of people
sold the
that
system,
were
yeah.
playing
And
it
it
on
was-
regular Xbox.
And another shitty thing, the backwards compatibility debacle.
Yeah, it was
Certain
a
games.
Certain
software.
games, and it wasn't
Different-
very good. Which games did get picked up, and then
It was
they just said,
it
"Fuck
required
you," and
it
quit.
required updates on the system for you to be able
Yeah.
to do it because it was software. It was
and
not
it was
100%.
and it was a
hardware.
download update.
And
So
all
you had to
those-
download it on a PC and burn a disk.
Every
and-
single one of these fucking updates every 5 weeks. The Xbox had a hard drive, but did not require updates all the time. All right, what's next? I'm tired of talking about this shit.
All right, so
That one was
Oh, that
depressing.
B minus. I give it a D or a C.
I'd give it a.
it's not a B.
I'm in the same boat with this with the PS2. They marketed it well. They couldn't sell it. There weren't good games in the beginning. I can't remember what I gave it. I would almost give it a B.
It's not the market leader this generation. It should. If it had it been a market leader this generation, I would have considered it, but it wasn't.
But it's the market leader for its markets.
Well, and consider go ahead and consider if you were a diehard Xbox fan, you're going to get the system. You're able to get the Xbox Live, and that was very well established at the time. And this was the first jump into the big next generation. So graphically, it was better than what you saw on the other ones.
But it wasn't that impressive.
It wasn't blow your mind impressive, but there was a level of it where if you get into the if you get the
if
I
you
really think,
if you had a PS2 because you wouldn't buy a GameCube because it was for Tuck Kitties,
Right.
then
It looked
it was
like
a
a purse.
huge update. And
Right, exactly.
when you look at the E3 and you compare the Xbox 360 to the PS3 does not look better than the Xbox 360. You steal a bunch of Sony's thunder. Mm-hmm. For the market that it was selling to,
it
did its job.
Nah, it's not. No, it's crap.
And Call of Duty 2 was only for the Xbox 360 and PC.
Okay. So let's go into the opposite side of the argument. Let's do the Wii next. Let's see what happens here, Mr. Tatton.
All right. So for the Wii, we launch at $249 on November 14th, 2006. Fantastic launch library of... Oh, actually, before we do that, we're back to pack-ins. So we have Wii Sports as a pack-in.
Probably the best pack-in of all time.
Best pack-in ever.
best launch pack-in. Because I'm going to say Super Mario Duck Hunt at World
Super
Truck
Mario
Class
3.
Track Meet.
Yeah, best...
pack-in.
Okay,
Yeah.
best launch pack-in.
Fine.
You know, Sonic the Hedgehog was a pack-in too.
I know.
Yeah, but I don't know that sold systems the way Wii Sports sold systems. Wii Sports
The
sold
Genesis was not
Wiis.
sold out for 2 straight years.
Yeah, which is crazy. Launch titles are Avatar: The Last Airbender, Call of Duty 3, Excite Truck, Happy Feet, Legend of Zelda: Twilight Princess, Madden NFL 07, Monster 4x4 World Circuit, Need for Speed Carbon, Rampage Total Destruction, Red Steel, SpongeBob SquarePants, Creature from Krusty Krab, Super Monkey Ball, Banana Blitz, Trauma Center Second Opinion, Barnyard, Cars, Dragon Ball Z, Tenkaichi 2, Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, GT Pro Series, Marvel Ultimate Alliance, Open Season, Rayman Raving Rabbids, and Tony Hawk Downhill Jam. None of those fantastic.
Raving Rabbids was okay. Wii Sports and Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess. Those are your 2 biggies.
Is it notable for being the only launch Zelda? Is that true? I can't think
Well,
of
it's
any
supposed to be a GameCube game, so that was
Yeah.
like
It was a GameCube game.
and they did the
and it did
GameCube
become
and
a
the Wii
GameCube game
version.
later.
And No, I thought they launched
No,
at the same time.
They launched at the same time, but
Okay.
it was the GameCube was dead.
Mirrored.
And the GameCube actually had additional level or dungeon than the Wii version.
And the
had.
one was a
Variation,
mirror,
because it was
image.
mirror, yeah.
But really, the Wii Sports was incredible. When did Wii Play come out?
It took a little while. I don't know if it was.
Okay, I didn't get one at launch. I don't know many
Sometime
people that
next
did.
year.
It took me 6 months to get one.
Well, for me, my brother-in-law got one on launch, and it brought back playing a new game at Thanksgiving. Like, I hadn't had that feeling since like Donkey Kong Country in 1994, and it was just so amazing. And I haven't had that experience since either,
Right.
playing a
It
game.
had so much potential, and they just
Like
squandered
nostalgic
it. But launch-wise, just with that game alone, at totally A material. That any system that can sell out a system for 2 years. Yes, it was bad playing on Nintendo, but they weren't expecting it to be that good, and they didn't want stock sitting on their shelves for so many years. So what did Wario come out that year?
Yeah, Wario came out that year.
That year, so that month, a month later, WarioWare, which is
And I
Amazing.
still think,
fucking fantastic
Amazing.
as well.
and I still think WarioWare is the game that gets the motion controls the best of everything that has ever been released for
Yep.
the Wii.
Agreed.
They understood how to make that work, and they made it work beautifully.
That was so much fun to play.
Wii Play is underrated in my book too. I really
Wii
enjoyed
Play was
it.
really good.
And the Duck Hunt reboot, the Combat reboot, those two games are well worth it. It's not just crappy Flash games. Yeah, the find a matching pair stuff is silly and stupid, but
This is when I first got burned by Super Monkey Ball because I bought this.
Yeah.
one when,
Yeah, I did
Monkey
too.
Ball,
It was
yeah, I did too.
awful.
Another great game that's pretty early. I think Zack and Wiki.
Yeah, I love Zack and
when that
Wiki.
came up. I'm surprised. Well, I guess it didn't sell very well. There should be some sequels to that, though. It was a great game.
It didn't, and this is where we really see the divide between people who call themselves hardcore gamers and casual gamers, and the
that's another
people in the
podcast,
middle.
so
Oh
let's
yeah,
keep
no,
this
we'll
light.
get to it, but I think that drove a lot of the sales because Microsoft and Sony were both. Nintendo was for kiddies and just continued that, and that really picked up a lot. And I think that affected a lot of the third-party developers. Thought if we invest money in developing mature titles for the Wii, they're not going to sell.
mature my ass.
We'll just release
Juvenile.
a bunch of casual stuff for all of the the parents, grandparents, whatever who are buying Wii's in the beginning.
Don't make me throw a
Okay,
microphone.
so I'm going to say from an occupational therapy standpoint, the Wii is an amazing system. It was able to go ahead and go beyond and go into the homes of people who did not ever consider buying a game system. The system itself, when it came out and had the motion controls, you were able to take that and put that in the hands of, people with lower mobility or, people who are just interested in moving while they're playing. There is an injury that it was caused by playing the Wii, and it has become an official injury in the medical world.
It's called broken LCD TVs.
That was funny. That was sad. That was sad. But the Wii was incredibly unique compared to everything else. And when it launched with Wii Sports, people could buy the Wii, get Wii Sports, and never buy another game for the system, and they would be okay with that.
Had all the potential in the world. That launch is incredible. It failed later on for a lot of people, but you can't knock the launch. It's definitely an A for me.
Yeah, it's a great launch, and it looks like, looking at that list, they really can sell that to just about anybody because it covers all the bases. Albeit, okay, so it's not as pretty as what you get on the Xbox 360 for your grainy, awful first-person shootery goo, but you're still able to cater to just about everybody and let people have fun doing it.
The Wii used colors other than brown.
Brown.
And it didn't have bloom. That was great.
Well, did Twilight Princess have bloom?
No, I don't think so.
No? Okay. I thought that had.
So
I don't know what that
everybody agree
means.
with
Bloom was the that weird like lens flare where it makes the screen all like super blurry, like almost
Oh.
like heat wave. Kind
Okay,
of
yeah. Like you're coming out into the sun from being inside.
We
Yeah,
got
exactly.
about 10 minutes.
Okay.
Keep it going.
So are we moving on to? That is an A.
PS3.
everybody
Yeah,
say-
A.
So that's
Yay!
PS3. This is our-
PS3,
this is
yes, our last
big
one.
finale,
I'm
Mr.
sorry that this is the last one. PS3 launched on November 11th, 2006. The prices were, there's two models I'm seeing here, 20 gigs for $499 or 60 gigs for $5.99.
$5.99.
Yeah.
No wireless internet in the
20 gigabyte.
model.
Correct.
And
What else did it
did
Not native backwards compatibility. I thought the 20 gig was. Is that
No,
hardware?
They both had
They both had
They're
backwards
hardware.
for
Okay.
PS1 and PS2, which they later dropped the PS2 compatibility.
Yep.
I think they still have PS1 compatibility. The games, I'll read the list of games. There's just, I'm sorry. Blazing Angels, Squadrons of World War II, Call of Duty 3, Genji, Days of the Blade, Madden NFL 07, Marvel Ultimate Alliance, Mobile Suit Gundam, Crossfire, NBA 2K7, NHL 2K7, Resistance Fall of Man, probably the one, universally liked game.
Yeah.
Ridge Racer 7, and it was an exclusive. Tiger Woods PGA Tour 07, Tony Hawk's Project 8, there's Tony Hawk again. Untold Legends Dark Kingdom. It was given a C.
D.
Yeah.
There wasn't even
Yeah, D.
there wasn't anything even downloadable as good. Flow was like the cool, supposedly artistically bullshit, pretentious piece of shit download game. But
I loved Flow. That
played-
was a really good
It
game.
my
played
point. See,
Blu-rays
Dad
out
liked
of
it.
the.
It must have been pretentious and shitty.
Sony knows how to sell hardware on the hardware and not the software.
But it
played
didn't sell.
Blu-rays
Just-
out of the box.
just
It
like-
didn't sell. It did not sell.
But just like the PS2, it sold for people who wanted to
It
play
did,
movies.
but they were stocked everywhere. You could get one from day one.
No,
People
no.
did not give a shit. It
Not
was
from
too
day
expensive.
one. There was a couple months where you couldn't get one.
No.
Yeah,
I gotta
yeah,
disagree with
there
that.
were.
If you wanted a PlayStation 3, you could have found one.
Were you working in a store then? And they were hard to find?
They were hard to find.
No, they were
Because I remember
not.
walking into Target
Yeah, they were
and
right
seeing
there.
them all the
Stacks
time
of
in
them.
Columbus, at least.
Yeah, they had stacks everywhere.
I was down in the Natty, and I do believe that the PlayStation 3 launch, at least 2 weeks then. But I remember it selling out.
I think it was a
remember my guys-
couple. It was a couple months.
No.
Because I had people who were asking me, trying to find them. Everyone's asking me to try to find them a Wii, and there were a handful of people for me to try to find them a PS3, and I'm like, oh, I know I've seen those around, and I go to look for it, and I can't find it anywhere.
No. Yeah, D. I mean, I'd give it.
But you weren't even looking for it, so did
I
you really?
was
did you
looking
really
for
pay
it because I
attention?
wanted to be right. Because these fucking internet trolls that were paid by Sony to virally market saying that it was destroying everybody. There were real legit news articles saying that the Wii was easy to find and the PlayStation 3 were experiencing shortages everywhere. And I knew that was
there were
bullshit.
shortages because stores were getting like one or two, like they weren't getting them on
So
enough.
I'm going
like
to
they were
say
getting the Wii.
that I believe it was reserved only for the GameStop guys. They were only able to meet the
Man.
reserves.
I
fuck
I
ever.
think
It
they were holding
sucked.
back stock on those more than it was.
They were
like
trying
a
to
shortage from
pretend it was
sales.
a pretend hype, unlike the Wii, which was accused of being pretend shortage, which wasn't. That was just Nintendo not realizing they had a gold mine. All right, so what did we say grade wise?
D.
Meh.
I say D.
D.
Yeah.
Great. All right, so real quickly here, the Game Informer article gave the best launch to the NES,
But it says that Super Mario Brothers was a launch game.
and it gave the worst to the 3DS or the 5200 and 7800. Now, we already talked about how they nerfed those. Like, the 5200 sucked, but the 7800, they based that off the test market and blah, 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 blah. I honestly say the PS3 is the worst launch of all time because the expectations were so high, they got nowhere near them.
No, I think the Pippin is the worst launch of all time.
But that didn't go anywhere.
If you can't even make it out of your test group,
Yeah.
then that's a terrible launch.
Yeah.
Like you failed.
Okay, so let's go mainstream systems that actually lived more beyond their launch, that survived the launch and kept going.
Tatton, you're showing your hipster roots.
I would rate the
Slam
PS3
City
better
with
than the
Scottie
32X. I would put the 32X as the worst.
But it had a successful launch. We already discussed that. It wasn't a failure. Like, the expectations of the PS3 were like skyrocket. It was going to dominate.
It still sold systems.
It sold
But it
systems.
sold
The
systems in
PlayStation
third
3
place.
It hadn't
PlayStation
disappointed
3
people
is
yet.
Still, the PlayStation 3 is still established. The
In third place.
The
It
32X
should have
did
been
not
in
last
first.
long.
Fine, but it's like the worst expectation.
but they also-
Was the 32X supposed to be a gigantic hit?
You're asking the wrong person, Sega boy.
The same market didn't exist when the 32X is out that existed now. There wasn't an internet hype machine. There weren't websites dedicated to
All we
to
saw
blow
was
and
sticking-
sunshine.
So you're,
up your
sticking
so
in
you're
drive.
arguing for
Genesis.
the PS3 being worse because the hype machine was so high for the PS3. And
But-
it failed. It just failed.
But not at launch. It didn't. It failed
Yes,
later.
It failed.
You couldn't buy
The
one
Wii
at
was
launch.
sold
And
out
people
everywhere.
People were still buying it. People were buying it on potential. It hadn't
Who are these
disappointed
people?
But
people.
Who owned
you're
a
yet.
but you're
PS
comparing it
PS
against the Wii. The
Did you-
32X up
did
against
anybody
what?
had a PS3 at launch?
No.
Did you?
Yeah, I knew lots of
You?
people with PS3s.
Yeah.
Wait, let's go around what we think is the best, though. Do you want to go
Yeah,
best launch?
Dreamcast was the best.
I'd go
32X
Dreamcast.
was the worst.
Coleco.
Dreamcast PS3. Or, sorry. Yeah, Dreamcast PS3.
So Coleco, and I'm gonna
Coleco is very good.
I'm gonna say the 32X as well because
All right, let's do standalone console, not a freaking add-on.
You don't have to sleep on the couch tonight.
Okay, get rid of the 32X. What's the worst console that isn't an add-on?
3DO. No,
That's not a...
Neo Geo. Because it was priced outside of
It was- yeah.
everyone's
It was
ability
niche,
to
though.
purchase.
Come on, do a real console with a real lineage.
Just
You
say
just, you
5200.
just want to force me to say PS3.
Yes!
And I'm not going to. 'cause-
So say it's the Xbox 360 then.
no, I wouldn't even give Xbox 360. I would put the next one in the list probably...
You're just a flowery freaking hippie with this stuff, thinking everything's beautiful and great, except for Atari.
No, I like Atari.
Jaguar?
Jaguar is pretty bad.
yeah, that was really rubbish.
Do you consider the Jaguar system that I can count? Because I'm torn between like 3DO and Jaguar, and 3DO is more expensive.
Consider
than the
the
Jaguar.
expectations of the system when it came out.
Oh, the
5200.
the Jaguar, because they were pushing that as a 64-bit system and nobody pulled it off.
Yeah, Jaguar.
But Atari was like on its last legs. The 7800 was nothing. The Lynx was nothing.
Yeah, but do not do that. Do not
then
go
you're
in there
making
and
it-
say
now you're just
we're the
making
greatest thing in the
excuses.
entire world and not deliver.
I mean, we're grading the launch. We're not grading the system as a whole.
And Cybermorph and Trevor McFur, relieve Trevor McFur, Murph.
PS3.
No,
Well,
sorry.
This has been fantastic. I enjoyed doing these 3 episodes, and we got some content for the next month and a half. And join our Facebook page and talk to us about it, and give us your own bitching and semi-intelligent rants about what your console launch memories.
Wait, are you saying that people are not going to have intelligent rants? They're only going to be semi-intelligent? We're expecting intelligent rants from our listeners.
I'm hoping for them. Yes, I would hope so.
No, I'm expecting them.
Okay,
But
we will put. It'll be buttery as fuck or get out.
Definitely, this is one to chime in on, because if we get a lot of feedback from this, we'll revisit this. Like we'll
do other
come
things.
back.
Yeah. More launches.
And honestly,
Newer
I would
launches.
love to go ahead and get people who were in different generations who can go ahead and say, well, I was there at this launch, or I was young when this system launched and it was really important to me, and this is why I bought the system over buying something else.
Okay. We'll end this on my little story about on the PS2 launch day when everybody and their grandma wanted a PS2. And Tatton and I were off work that day, and I thought, I've got some extra money. Maybe we should go shopping and see what we can find. So we hit game store after game store and Circuit City, and we go to this one game store, and this guy's already trying to trade in a sealed copy of Fantavision. And he's like, look, it's the only DVD game, man. This is worth a lot of money. You should buy it. And he's like, I'll give you $10 for it. But it was obviously stolen. We played some Tekken Tag Tournament. Saw all the Jaggies and thinking, yeah, this rocks. And I'm thinking to myself, no, this doesn't really rock. I don't get what you're doing here. So we finally go out to West Point Games out in near Hilliard, and this is the store that got busted for tax evasion. And
They're back. They're not bad anymore.
but that's a different owner now. But we go in, and oh my god, I finally saw what I was looking for all day, and I ask for it, and she pulls the box down off the counter, and I check out, and I get out to the car, and I go, yes! And I go home, and I open up my Samba de Amigo maracas and start playing Samba de Amigo. So, thanks for listening to the podcast, and Facebook us and stuff, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks,
Thanks for
guys.
listening.
Bye-bye.
Now you're playing with podcast.
Hey listeners, this is Tatton. Just wanted to take a quick moment and let you know that there's lots of great places you can follow Now You're Playing With Podcast. We have a Facebook page set up, which is Now You're Playing With Fan Page. We have a Twitter account set up, which is NYPW Tweets, or Now You're Playing With Tweets. And, of course, all of the episodes are available for download from NowYou'rePlayingWith.com. So we hope you enjoy the show. If you like it, please take a moment and send us a message. Let us know what you think about it, and we hope to have some more shows coming for you soon. Until then, thanks for listening.
Now you're playing with podcast.